Can't hear you.
Hey,
There you are.
how we doing?
All right, hold on. We're live.
How's it sound? Any
Sounds good.
rebound? Good. Echoes?
All right, now we're official.
Great.
So, can you guys hear him okay? All right, speak.
Hello, everyone. How's my sound? Just checking. I'm not too great at this.
How does he sound? You sound good on my end.
Oh, great.
Um, White Lotus, how do we sound? So I haven't used Zoom in a while. All right, sounds good. All
Good.
right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to my channel. If you're new to my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you guys don't know, I have a special guest tonight. It is Joel Murray. He's actually retired NYPD, who's now an attorney for NYPD. Well, in New York, actually, not NYPD. But
Right.
so I'm going to have him introduce himself, and because he will do a better job than I will. So go ahead, Joe. Tell everyone who you are.
Well, thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me on. I was so excited. I just stumbled across your channel and was listening to you talk and the things you were saying. I just admire your courage to really come out supporting the police. This war on the police really has to end. But just to introduce myself, my name is Joe Murray. I'm a retired New York City police officer. I left the department. I became a criminal defense attorney. 2019, I ran for Queens County District Attorney. It's where I live. Was born and raised, went to school. I worked as a cop. I thought it was a great fit for me. And then, I've been very happy doing my practice and stumbled across a couple of other podcasts. I love being on Police Off the Cuff with Bill Cannon and Phil Grimaldi, another great show, and Duty Ron. I'm on his show a lot too. So I love this true crime community. We're actually going to start our own channel shortly called Allegedly Guilty, because I do a lot of criminal defense and I have a lot of interesting cases that I'm sure you're going to love.
Absolutely. And I am honored because I did hear, now, no offense, but I did know who you were first. And everyone in
It
the
was
chat
kind of
was
fun.
like, everyone in the chat was like, he's from Police on the Cuff. He's from Police Off the Cuff and Duty Ron. So I am actually honored that because you are on with other, retired police officers, that I'm honored that, you found me, you became a member, and that you really liked what I had to say. That means a lot because I do go against what the norm is for the average Joe, the average person. So
I just want to correct you on something. I didn't like what you had to say. I loved what you had to say.
Thank you.
And it was a little embarrassing because I just came onto the channel and I was so excited to tell you. And I was like, Denise, I love this channel. This is fantastic. And you're like, oh, thank you, but I'm not Denise. I screwed up your name. Like that proves that I just came here. I didn't really. It was the first day I was there, and I just loved it, and I had to tell you.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. I really do.
It was funny.
Because I do.
You're like, yeah, that's great. I'm not Denise though.
I know. I thought you were talking to someone in chat. I was like, is he talking to someone in chat? Who's Denise?
It's funny.
So
I don't know how I forgot Laura. That's my first wife's name. Like, how could I ever forget?
that's why you forgot, because it's your first
Yeah.
wife's name. Their first wives are easy to forget.
My high school sweetheart at that. So
There you go.
Anyway, so happy to be here, Laura.
And I'm so
And,
happy to have you, honestly.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know I have a ton of questions, and I know the audience is going to have a ton of questions. But first thing I want to get right out the bat, right out of the gate,
Yeah.
is something that I've been fighting for from jump, and that's the Fifth Amendment right. Now, as an attorney, you would, all right, let's equate this to the Gabby Petito case. If her family called you, I'm sorry, his family called you up, because there seems to be so much confusion on the Fifth Amendment and the fact that the public thinks that the lawyer or the family owe the public something and they don't. From a attorney perspective, I said yesterday that I feel, people are like, oh, now the attorney's talking. I'm like, I feel like it's a don't ask, don't tell. He's not going to offer information that is not requested. When he has to give information is when he's going to. Is that what he's doing? Am I way off base? Do you feel like he's trying to hide something, or is he doing what any attorney would do?
Yeah, I think this is a common question that came up right away when everyone was so outraged that they didn't reach out to the Petito family, Brian, or the parents, or any of the family, and there was no communication, which I thought was odd until I heard they retained counsel, and then I understood it, because it would actually be malpractice for an attorney to encourage their clients to talk to anyone, because you don't know who could be charged. You're really just getting into the case and you're learning about it. And any type of statement that you make, we all know the Miranda warnings. Anytime you make a statement, it can and will be used against you in a court of law. If you're the defendant, that's called a party admission. So you should not talk to anyone but your lawyer. And that's rule. It would be malpractice for an attorney to tell someone to go talk to them. Let me explain what I would do if this was my case. Okay. And I did it on the police off the cuff. I explained to them, I have cases like this, not crazy, homicides from out of state, but I have cases where the police want to talk to my client. In one scenario could be that my client is totally innocent, but the evidence is pointing to him or her. So what I would do is that the district attorney offers they have a policy, and the federal government, a proffer, where you can go in there and you sign, in essence, a contract that says, essentially, we recognize you have a right to remain silent, but we'll allow you to come in, tell us your story. We'll investigate it. If, in fact, we find or agree with you that you're not responsible, the case goes away, and you've helped yourself to make it go away. If under other parts of the investigation, they still feel that you have some liability and they bring a case against you, they can't use anything you said in their direct case. The only time would be if you got on the stand and then told a different story. They would say, wait a minute, you came into our office and said this, but that would be the only exception. So it's a great tool to come in there, and I've done it so many times to clear my client who had no responsibility, but it looked like he was responsible. Okay. The second scenario would be they do have, some liability, but, I'm going to conduct my investigation. I'm going to work with my client. We're not ready to talk to anyone, the district attorney or anyone, and we'll investigate it on our own, but we'll leave it. The third scenario is somebody's really guilty. And if I talk to my client, let's just say I talk to Brian, and he tells me it was a fight and there's blood and DNA all over the place. It's all over her body. When they do the autopsy, there's going to be no question it was him. I'd be like, Brian, let's get out ahead of this. Let's go to the DA. Let's talk to them. Let me negotiate a proffer with them. Again, another proffer, but he's going to show them where the body is and, cooperate, hopefully for a lesser sentence or something like that. That would be like the only scenario that, I would really bring him in to give information if he was responsible. But again, that's his decision. Ultimately, he may say, no, I'm not doing it. Okay. But that would be my advice.
I was just going to say that is another very, very big misconception that people have about attorneys. The client doesn't work for the attorney. The attorney works for the client. So if the client says, fuck you, I'm not taking your advice, I'm paying you for you to keep your mouth shut, for me to keep my mouth shut, that's exactly what's going to happen. And a lot of people seem to think the attorney makes the rules. No, the client makes the rules because they're the ones paying.
I just want to clarify that because you're absolutely right. The client is the boss. But when there's a breakdown and you and your attorney don't agree on certain matters, then you got to look at the relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't the right attorney. We don't agree as to how to proceed. That causes a dysfunction and, breakdown in communication. So I would try to feel that out right away. I'm very close with my clients, and, it's important that you're going in the same direction, So yes, you are right. The client controls that. But if there's that dysfunction, I may say to the client, I may not be the right attorney for you. I don't agree with your, direction. Let's get you someone else.
Now, speaking of that, in a situation like this, if we don't know where Brian is,
Right.
what are the odds that the attorney might know something? Is that like slim to none? A lot of people seem to think that the attorney is helping him, and I don't agree with that. I think the attorney's as
that's all
clueless
speculation.
as we are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all speculation. There's no evidence of that.
Okay.
Certainly, I would think, because if you have somebody who's not yet been charged and you're representing them, and I do that, the first thing I do is reach out to the government, either the state prosecutor or the federal prosecutor who has the case or is investigating it. I'll get to that person. I'll introduce myself, send them a letter of representation, and say, look, if something comes out of this and you want to, proceed with an arrest, contact me and I'll produce my client. Don't send the hit team to the house to, go get him. I'll surrender him. We'll make arrangements to do that. And they usually, complicit with that. They're very happy that we can do that, surrender,
Okay.
voluntary surrender. And the police are happy about that. It's very dangerous to go apprehend someone, particularly in their home.
Now, why would, and I've struggled with this from day one, why would they have a place of residence in Florida, a homicide in Wyoming, and a lawyer from New York? A
lot of people ask me that. I think I didn't look into it, but I think he's like a real estate lawyer. He's not really a trial criminal lawyer. What are they doing? Well, listen, at this stage of the game, the most important thing is trust, confidence that they'll be confidential and give us advice because we are, whatever their relationship is. I believe there must be some kind of relationship or a third party relationship, because at this point, he's not going to be the trial lawyer. He's giving them advice about their situation right now.
Okay.
And it could just be that friend or colleague, relationship that set them up.
Okay, that makes sense, because I'm like, Northport police can't do anything. There's nothing Florida can do because the homicide happened in Wyoming. Trial's gonna be in Wyoming, not Florida. So I'm like,
Right.
Why would they hire a lawyer in New York? Why not hire a lawyer in Wyoming? Because that's where they're gonna need one. So that's
Sure.
where I was confused.
Yep.
Another question that seems to be asked a lot, and I'm very curious about, is if they find him, a lot of people think he's making it worse by running.
Right.
However, if they find him, if for some reason he says, my parents knew where I was the whole time, is that enough to charge them or no?
I don't think that would ever happen.
No, but I'm saying, like, what if something happens and he, like, acts like I was here the whole time? Like, my parents knew I was here. One of those kind of things.
It's kind of a strange scenario. I don't see what his benefit would be to do that. It doesn't, exculpate him from any liability. And I don't think the government actually wants to use him as a cooperating witness against his parents. So I don't think they would even bite at that,
Okay. Do you agree?
But I do see where you're going with this. The one thing I just want to caution about is we don't really have evidence that he fled. Yes, I believe he probably fled, but there's really no evidence of that I'm aware of. it just circumstantially, oh, he must have just, went to the park there and went up into the Appalachians. I mean, everyone believes it and it's likely to be true, but we don't have evidence of that yet. The parents reported him missing. I think the parents knew better as to what he was doing, what timetable he was working off of, and the logistics. And when they called the police and said he's missing, they're drawing down all the resources to look for this guy. So they could have just sat back and said, no, he went, hiking, or said nothing, as you pointed out.
Yeah,
there's no obligation.
But the argument...
But to report him missing, you're drawing down all law enforcement resources to find him. So I kind of, want to believe that he genuinely was missing to them in their eyes, but he may be running on his own, but to them, like, they may have had a timetable and a schedule and all of a sudden he didn't show up. And I think, they really were acting in genuine concern for him, because look what they did. The manhunt that's going on right now is incredible. True. Why would they do that if they believed he fled?
True. However, the argument that I'm going to give on that one is...
Okay. I love it.
Yes, they have, they reported him missing. Yeah. They also gave him a couple of day head start. And more importantly, they're not looking for him. Why aren't they looking for him? If he's missing, why aren't they looking anywhere?
This is a unique situation because of all of the media attention and the outcry and outrage at this family from the beginning. So I think, they're saying to themselves, we're not going to do press conferences because we're going to get crushed. Asking for people to help and find him like you would normally see. This is not the normal case. People are ready to stone them to death.
I agree.
So I don't think you're going to see them coming out proactively searching. I think they're actually fearful. And I was very upset when I saw that video of dog at the door banging and banging and banging, on their front door. I think it was just showmanship. He knew he wasn't going to get anywhere. And I'm glad I wasn't there and I wasn't their attorney, because I would have opened the door and went out and greeted him, but he wouldn't have liked the way I greeted him.
And I agree with you 150%, but I know that a lot of people don't have that viewpoint. And I said, they're prisoners in their own home. They can't come outside. They just can't. If they leave their house, they're followed. If they go anywhere, they're followed. They were in the backyard. There's drones over it. And what do you expect them to do? I kind of feel bad for them because I have 3 kids. And, unless my son came home and said, Mom, I murdered Gabby. I murdered my girlfriend. If he came home and said, Mom, we had an argument. It was self-defense. She came at me with a 2x4, whatever. It's a little different. Or, for all we know, he said, Mom, she's supposed to be right behind me. I came home and boom, I went back and she was dead. And I'm scared and they're going to come find me and they're going to blame me for it. And I'm leaving. I'm going to protect my kid. And I know people don't want to hear that, but I'm going to protect my kid unless I knew for sure that he's the one that killed her. And to this day, we don't really know if he's the one that killed her. We all assume he did, but there's no proof that he did yet.
Yeah, you're so right. And there's so much we don't know. And that's why I caution people, don't jump to conclusions, because look at this that we just learned, that he flew home. What was it, the 17th, I believe?
The 14th, 17th to the 24th, I think.
Doesn't that change things for you? I mean, they were in love on the, they're engaged, they're out there. They had that domestic on the 12th. And I think then it was the week, was that Friday or Thursday or Friday? And then it was the weekend. Yeah. So maybe that was the first flight. I mean, he had to wait for her because they separated. They were told to be separated. Then they got back and maybe there was just, hey, you know what? I need a break. I don't need to go to jail. I don't want to have a problem. I'm going home. So, I mean, I don't want to speculate that she called him and come back, please. I don't know. But for me, it's set. This is what this guy does. And the best indicator of future conduct is looking at their past conduct. And I try to tell people that, look what he did. He locked the door of the van and said, you go this way, I'll go this way. He likes it. I mean, that's his pattern. Separate. Let's walk away. Let's get away. And he did that. We saw it on camera. Like, that's what he was doing. Now he decides to, okay, we need a break. I'm going home. To me, that's very powerful. And he came back not to kill her. I mean, what's the motive? So
that's what
I don't know if it's that crazy that they had another argument. Maybe they did one of those walkaways where the Bethunes found that van and she didn't come back. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I do know that him having already had one domestic incident that was reported, there may have been others, that maybe he wasn't so quick to call the police because he knew they would look at him and they would find these reports and he'd get locked up. So he decided, I'm going home. Now, you can't assume he told his parents, even if he did kill her, you can't assume he told his parents.
I agree.
I mean, he's 23 years old. If he did, he knows the jackpot that he's in.
Yep.
And telling his parents, he's going to make enemies out of him, or they'll be resistant to help him.
And he needed them.
So to assume they knew this and they're conspiring to hide him and help him flee, I think everybody just took too many leaps without knowing facts. And this fact about him flying home just really hit me hard. I was like, wow, that's what he does.
Yep.
He doesn't attack. He's like, let's break up. Let's separate. And he separated for a couple of days. So I thought that was very significant, but there's more. There's so much more in that case file that we have no idea.
I know.
And I'll tell you what else is so much more. That autopsy, the fact that they have not come forward and charged him is very concerning.
See, that's what I said, and people are saying no, that they're not going to let him, they're not going to give the public that. But then I look back at FBI's Most Wanted and all the TV shows and all the real life, people are wanted for murder every day, and they're on the run. Well, they don't hide that they're wanted for murder. They have to tell you that they're wanted for murder because they could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Him being a credit card thief, we don't even know if it was Gabby's credit card. It could have been somebody else's credit card. Maybe he found a wallet. Like, who knows? The fact that they're not saying it's Gabby's and that they're not saying that it's him makes me wonder. On the flip side of that, I feel like maybe the autopsy told Gabby's family that it was him. And that's why they're on Dr. Phil saying that, please turn yourself in. If they don't believe, if they didn't know that he did it, my assumption would be they don't care if he would turn himself in unless they just want answers.
Well, here's something else that I want you and your audience to consider. A grand jury is a secret proceeding. Nobody knows when they meet. Nobody knows who the witnesses are except the government. And nobody knows what they found.
True.
The grand jury could have indicted him under a separate indictment, a charge for the homicide, one of the many homicide charges that fit, and it's under seal. And a lot of times that happens in the federal court where the grand jury will meet in secret, they'll vote an indictment, it'll be under seal until the apprehension because they don't want to give notice to the defendant. It's entirely possible because I was very critical of the government. I'm like, how could they be so sloppy by indicting him on this unauthorized access device charge alone by itself? And I looked at the docket And on the docket, they were sloppy about it. They cited one section of the law in the grand jury indictment, and then on the arrest warrant, they put a different one. That's just bad. I'm copying from one to the other. Sloppy, hasty work. Then they moved to seal it, and the judge granted it. The very next day, they moved to unseal it. To me, I think the government at that time was like, we want to show that we're doing something, and then we want to call down the public's help. He's now wanted, help us find him. I think that may have been the deliberative process why they changed positions. As a matter of fact, I think they cite that in the motion, that they were contacted by the FBI that said it would be better if you left it public. So the fact that it was sealed and then they unsealed it, perhaps there's a separate indictment for the homicide that has yet to be unsealed, like a lot of these cases.
See, that makes sense, though, because it is a federal case and it is a federal homicide. So it would make sense if it was sealed. I have no doubt. It
could be a federal case because a lot of times they defer to the local jurisdiction. And I believe that it should be. From the Constitution standpoint, we know how the framers were. They were so afraid of federal control. So they drafted the Constitution with very specific enumerated powers designated in the Constitution for the federal government. Everything else is left to the states, including local criminal laws and stuff like that. The 10th Amendment, which they adopted, it was like, it says it right there that anything not enumerated in the Constitution is left for the states. Like, they were so concerned about that. So I believe that they legally are allowed to do it, but my belief is the federal government should only prosecute cases against the United States or U.S. officials or, attacks on U.S. property and stuff like that. Completely federal jurisdiction.
Okay.
But this is a common law homicide. The states do a better job and they do more prosecutions of homicides than the federal government.
Okay.
I would prefer that it be left to the state, the local jurisdiction, let them, a jury of their peers and do it that way.
Okay. Speaking of Constitution, from a lawyer perspective, from a cop perspective, do innocent people run? Yes,
they do.
Why?
For the same reason. Look at what's happening here. He had a couple of, one domestic that we know of, but I'm sure there were others that were not seen or reported. And the first thing he's thinking is, if I call the police now, they're going to automatically look at me and I'm going to be target number one. They're not going to want to hear what I have to say. And he panicked. That could be. It happens. I had a case like that where the guy was on the run for a couple of months and someone referred him to me. And I got to tell you, I thought cops drink a lot. Defense lawyers, because we have so much pressure on us.
Hold on. Thank you, Jana.
What's that?
No, I said thank you, Jana.
Oh, sorry. So this guy came to me. He's on the run. He's fleeing from a violent felony, has a prior felony. I mean, he's facing 25 years. And I told him the first thing you have to do, he never met me before. It was just a mutual friend who I represented. And, in my office, I have all my police and, he knew I was a retired cop. And so I was so flattered that he trusted me. And then when I arranged for his surrender, because you got to surrender. And as a lawyer, I can't help you be on the lam. I got to bring you in. So I made arrangements for him to come in. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, as I'm walking him into the precinct, this could be the last day this guy sees the light of day for 25 years. And he's putting that faith in me because he's innocent. And he just, it was just awesome. So I got him out on bail. We did an investigation. We got video surveillance that showed there was no robbery. There was no gun. we testified at the grand jury. And I don't know if you're familiar with, Staten Island. When I walked
Not
into the
really.
grand jury, I thought I walked into the police locker room. They look like cops and firemen in that whole grand jury. My client is African, he's an African immigrant and dark skin, but he's such a delightful person. He really appealed to the grand jury. We showed the video. They asked to see it again, back it up, move it here. I want to see that part. They were very good. They were very engaged, to see what the evidence was. We had two other witnesses who were there and witnessed what happened. They didn't want to hear him. They voted no true bill, no indictment, and the co-defendant who was in custody got released. He's a rapper, and he ended up doing a rap video about this thing, and he was like, Joe, I want to do it in your office. I want to have you in it. You saved my life. So it was
Thank you,
so
Tony.
flattering.
Aw.
Yeah, it was nice. But this guy's innocent, but, he has a record. He was on the scene, and, the guy, what it was? It was an Uber cab driver who said he had a gun and it was a gunpoint robbery. This is what people sometimes do when they want police response. There's a gun, there's a gun, there's a gun. He had a gun, he robbed, and this was one of those cases, and I talked to the detectives too. I was like, I asked this one detective, I was like, listen, you've been a detective doing robberies and all that. Have you ever had someone who was robbed at gunpoint with a gun to their head get out of the car and chase the guy down the block?
Exactly.
And, you know what I mean? I was like, has that ever happened? Because it never happened to me. Did that raise any red flags? There was no gun. So it was a great story, great case, and a great outcome. And I was so relieved. The pressure that's on us, It's not the guilty ones that I worry about. It's the innocent ones that are like, wait a minute, I gotta win this one,
Because there is a misconception, and I've talked about this more than once. There is a misconception about courts and about the system that if you just tell the truth, then everything will be okay. And that's a blatant lie.
Yeah,
and I've tried to explain to people, and I hate to use this as an example, but it's like the best example. Casey Anthony's father. Did you watch that trial?
I didn't watch the trial, but yeah.
Everybody said that Casey Anthony's father must be guilty from the way he acted on the stand.
He was so stoic,
But it looked like exactly what a lawyer told him to do. Yes or no answers. Don't make facial expressions because you don't know how the jury's going to read it. And be as calm as possible. I was told that during my custody fight. It's the best advice my lawyer gave me. Do not, and it wasn't jury trial, but do not offer more information than what's asked. If they ask you, you answer yes or no. If they ask you to explain, then give a one-sentence explanation. That's what Casey.
Yeah, you got to know your client though, because before you get to a trial like that or hearing, you really have to have a comfort level with your client. You're talking to them, you're meeting with them. There are certain clients that you ask them, how you doing today? And they're going to tell you their life story. It's like, to your point, answer the question. So I have to drill them along the way as I, engage with them. Answer what the person is asking. Don't, try to help them by, what they're looking for and give them something else.
Yep.
Do you have 2 credit cards or 3? I have 3. You know what I mean? Don't say, well, one is an American Express and one's just answer the question. You're so right. That's so important.
When I was learning my lawyer skills, I had my ex on the stand. It was I was suing him. And I had him on the stand, and the judge was kind of helping me, like, what to do. And all of a sudden, what my lawyer taught me kicked in. And I asked him, like, did you steal the phones? Did you steal my phones? So he starts going on a tangent. I say, excuse me, sir, yes or no? Did you steal my phones? And the judge, you could see, got a little smile on her face. And he started going off on a tangent. The judge said again, she asked you a direct question. I go, answer the question, yes or no.
Yeah.
Did you steal my phones? Yes. Thank you. And I was like,
There it
yes.
is. There it is. Move to strike is unresponsive.
Exactly.
Judge, direct him to answer that question, you know?
Exactly. But it is. It's the one thing that my lawyer, well, he taught me a lot of things, but
Yeah.
the main thing he taught me is you don't offer any more information than what's asked. Yes
Correct.
or no.
It's, you know, unless it's something that can help you, but generally, you know, no, don't do that. You know, there's such a thing as, you know, a laughing jury is not a hanging jury. I had a client who just had that kind of personality, and I was like, go with it, you know, and not guilty, you know. So you got to know your client, and that's how you adjust your advice. But generally, that's the golden rule. Just, you know, less is more.
Yep.
Yes or no, and usually cross-examination when your client is being cross-examined. A direct testimony, you have to ask open questions, so they have to elaborate a little. Cross-examination should be, if someone's doing it right, yes, no, because they already have it mapped out where they want you to go. They know the answer before they ask it. Isn't it true that you were driving the car? Yes. Isn't it true that she wanted to leave and you said no? Yes. You know what I mean? Like you walk them down that when you cross-examine them. So you develop a record and you're talking to the jury just by like asking the question, but you're looking at them. It's just, you know, that's the way it's done. But sometimes people do that. You know, they ask open-ended questions like that on cross-examination. So you got to coach your client and tell them no, yes or no, whenever possible. Less is more.
Here's another misconception that people have, general public, about any case, is people that don't take the stand are automatically trying to hide something or they're guilty. From an attorney perspective, can you...
That's a huge misconception, huge. And I'll tell you why. And I do that to my clients. And I'll even do that to the jury sometimes, because we're allowed, like, depends on who your judge is, you're allowed to, like, ask them about standards of proof. In a criminal trial, the standard of proof is so high. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's very high. And the law says you don't have to say a word. In a civil trial, you can't refuse to testify.
Oh, really?
You have to testify.
I didn't know that.
The standard is a preponderance, 51%. Is it, you know, more likelier than not that this person did it? That's a lower standard. Now, I find when you put your client on the stand, juries throw out the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And they go like this, I don't know, I heard the complainant, I heard the victim. I don't know if I like that defendant or what. And they start doing it like, who do I believe more, even if it's ever so slightly? That is dangerous because it is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So you have to reinforce to the jury. I mean, we did a trial with a couple of colleagues of mine, and it was a tough case, but, you know, the prosecutor, you know, got up there and, of course, you know, they're not allowed. There's certain prosecutorial misconduct if they, you know, try to bring out, oh, he didn't testify. But, you know, they're trying to say, you know, in essence, they have nothing. Well, you know, we got up there in closing because we go first and we're like, listen, we all know the judge is going to instruct you. My client has no obligation. In this country, you're innocent until such time that they're able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that would be the time to determine whether or not you should testify.
However, it's supposed to be innocent till proven guilty, but we're really guilty till proven innocent. Because
100%.
we would not be sitting in prison for, you know, while awaiting trial if we were truly innocent till proven guilty.
It's a legal concept that the defendant is always presumed innocent, and a jury is never allowed to consider them guilty until the prosecutor pushes over that burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But I always do it too. When I get up there, I tell them, no, you know what? You're going to hear the judge say that my client has the right not to testify. You can't hold that against him. It's a fundamental constitutional right we all enjoy. But my client did testify. You know what he said when he testified, when they arrested him at the arraignment? Not guilty. He said, I'm not guilty, and now it's their responsibility to prove he is guilty. That's, how you bring it home and drive that point home. It's up to them to prove it.
Now, I say that no matter what, Brian Laundrie will never get a fair trial, no matter what. I don't care who you are, where you're from, you've heard about this case. You can't turn on the news and not know about this case. Some people disagree with me and say, well, my great-grandmother, never heard of it. From a legal standpoint, from an attorney standpoint, do you agree that he doesn't have a chance in hell of having a fair trial, no matter what?
I agree that it would be extremely difficult, but there are some remedies that the court has available to it. And, there are other cases now ongoing, but the seminal case now is George Floyd. And because there was the two big remedies are whenever there's pretrial publicity and it's biased and it's, against the defendant, the first thing the court would entertain is a delay of the trial because something else is going to happen and be the top of the news and kind of take the headlines away and things will, die down or slow down. So they'll do a pretrial delay to allow that to happen. And when there's nothing more to report except it's delayed, there's not a lot that people will be talking about. So that's the first remedy. The second remedy is let's move it out of this jurisdiction because there are like the laundries, there are people camping out in front of their house. And so let's move this to another jurisdiction where it would be less likely that they're not having all this pretrial publicity. And that happened in New York with the Diallo shooting. Amadou Diallo was shot by the NYPD. They charged him with murder, but because of the outrage and the protests and all the pretrial publicity that was so biased against the officers, they made a motion for a change of venue and they moved it all the way up to Albany County where it wasn't a big deal. There weren't protests and marches in the streets and it wasn't, clogging up everyone's news channels. And they were able to get a fairer trial there because people didn't hear about it. But I also want to address that. Like there are a lot of people that do, follow these cases but there are a lot of people that don't and could care less and that they're not involved. You'd be surprised because I do these, these trials and, a lot of these jurors aren't on social media. They don't, interact regularly with, they're disgusted by the news. They're so busy in what they're doing. You'll be surprised. There are some people, so it's possible to pull a few out, but they're going to just, give you more challenges and, cause challenges are very big when you're picking a jury. If somebody's biased, and you got to hope they're all being honest, about what they heard and saw. But think about it. It's really unfair that we have a judge who's there and the prosecutor wants to introduce evidence of something that was on the news a month ago and everyone saw it. Mm-hmm. And then the judge says, no, this is highly prejudicial. It outweighs the probative value. I'm going to deny, you to enter that into evidence. What's the point if everyone saw it already? The judge is the gatekeeper of what the jury is allowed to see and hear. So if people have already heard everything and the judge can't exclude anything, it defeats the ability to get a fair trial.
Now, I understand it very well that we have a right to a jury trial. Right. If Brian is innocent, let's just say he's actually innocent. Isn't he better off not doing a jury trial? Like I always said, if I was innocent and I'm going on, and I'm putting my fate in the hands of people, I want people that know what they're doing, not somebody that might rule on emotion. I don't see that often. Is that a risk too big to take? Because we all know judges can only go by the law. I mean, they're not supposed to go by emotion. But I feel like juries are more for guilty people trying to get off. Like, hopefully they won't, they'll listen to the bullshit or whatever. But I don't know. I just feel like in a case where I'm actually innocent, I'm better off taking my chances with a judge. Am I wrong?
Well, it depends on the judge, right?
That's
You don't
true.
know who the judge is because we all know just from practicing on a regular basis in a particular courthouse who are the real hang-em judges, who are the ones that are more liberal and you know, open-minded about cases. A lot of them are former prosecutors, not saying they're all pro-prosecution. They sometimes switch and they're like more libertarian, but you got to know who your judge is before you make that decision. But it is a wise decision when you have a very unpopular case that you're afraid of the overwhelming pressure that juries are going to have. So you may want to leave it to a judge because there are very definite legal issues that only, you know, a judge can really, you know, comprehend and process and understand. And we did that in the Bronx. I had a white former police officer who became a fireman, and he was at like Yankee Stadium and there was a fight. So it was just, you know, it was terrible what happened. He was actually innocent. There were a group of people and somebody just pointed him out. And, you know, but I was like, look, bro, you're in the Bronx. It's a rough crowd here. They're not too cop friendly. Maybe we should consider a judge. And we had a great judge. This judge was like a scholarly judge. We presented motions and papers. He was so good on the law. So we decided to do a bench trial. We call it a bench trial. And we got so many great rulings out of that. And the prosecutor, there was so much prosecutorial misconduct. They were desperate to prosecute this guy and convict him because he was a cop previously. And it became so clear. It was, you know, you have a case like that when there are 6 prosecutors. Subsequently, one gets on the case, then he gets off, makes some kind of excuse to get off. Then they assign someone else. That one gets off. 6 of them. Okay. So, I mean, that just shows you how everyone was like, yeah, I don't want this case. Because it was so dirty what they were doing to this guy. But we were successful. It was me and my 2 partners. I previously was in a firm with 2 other partners. And we took them apart. You know, we took turns on each witness and we just broke them down. And the judge, he's the kind of judge that appreciates good lawyering. When you have good lawyers that know the law and they're making good, valid arguments, judges like that. I'm sorry. But that's what saved the day, I got to tell you. You know, so the decision to go bench or jury is a very difficult one, very difficult one. But in this case and a lot of cases, it works out in your favor. Because
I feel like, and I equate the Brian Laundrie to Scott Peterson. I do not have beyond a reasonable doubt Scott Peterson is guilty. I don't. I've never have. And I also don't believe in circumstantial evidence, which is something I want to talk to you about.
Circumstantial evidence is great. Are you kidding me? Think about what you're talking about.
But
circumstantial evidence.
Anybody can make, all right, for example.
Give me an example, because maybe we're talking about 2 different things.
I'll give you an example. Somebody says, I saw you hit that old lady. You were in front of the store at 7 p.m. and you ran down the road and I saw you whack her in the head and steal her purse.
Okay.
And there's no proof that you did this, except
but that's not circumstantial. This is why we're talking about 2 different things. You said, I saw you hit that lady and run down the road. That's direct eyewitness evidence. That's not circumstantial. Here's circumstantial. You and I go into a room. There's only one door in and out. There's no windows. There's a crowd of people outside the room. A gunshot goes off. Nobody witnesses it, but I walk out with a gun. Nobody saw me shoot you, but there were only 2 people in the room, and I'm holding the gun. That's circumstantial evidence. That's powerful. Is it possible you had the gun and shot yourself and I took it away from you? Possible.
Okay.
But it's still powerful circumstantial evidence.
Okay, but
that's not direct eyewitness
hold on.
evidence.
Going on your scenario. What if my fingerprints are on the gun?
Exactly, but it doesn't negate the fact that it's circumstantial evidence and it's very powerful.
But you could go away for 25 years when I shot myself. But because...
Yeah, well, exactly, but that's circumstantial evidence doesn't mean it's conclusive 100%, but it's very persuasive. In it, it actually shows a scenario where it would be unreasonable that somebody else did it. Circumstantially, it had to be you, because you're the only one there, So yes, you can rebut it. It's not conclusive, but it's powerful.
Okay. All right. I just, from a legal standpoint,
Yes.
I don't know, maybe it's the philosophical way I think, but like you said, I could have killed myself. I could have shot myself.
Exactly.
And you took the gun away from me, and you're going to go to jail for 25 years for something you didn't do because the prosecutor said, well, you must have shot her.
No, I'll tell you in that scenario what would happen. That I would be apprehended. They would take the gun. They would do prints. They would do DNA. So, there'd be other evidence. It's not the only evidence.
Well, the reason
but
why
it is powerful, it's powerful evidence.
Powerful enough, like Brian Laundrie was the last person to be with her, and she ends up dead, and he flees home. Kind of circumstantially, he automatically did it. But
not that he automatically did it. It evinces the fact that the fact that the body was found 250 yards from where the van was found, that's powerful. If they can prove that he either brought the van there or he took the van from there. Circumstantially, he was right there, 250 feet or yards from the body. So it's not conclusive, but it helps because you put him on the scene very close to where the body is. Now you examine the body and you look in the wounds. You do nail scrapings. You look for DNA. You want to find things to tie him to the body.
Why do you think that they haven't released how she died? Like, what does that have to do with not finding him, the grand jury? Just released. She was strangled, she was shot, she was hit, something. Why do you think they haven't released
I think it's always wise for law enforcement to keep facts close to the vest. And like I said, we don't really know. Either they're very stupid or they're being smart with this because they've already indicted him, but it's a sealed indictment.
Okay.
So we just don't know yet. They may already know that. I'm sure they already do. I mean, talking to Barbara Butcher, who's a former death investigator, has done hundreds of autopsies. She's like, when you do an autopsy, whether it's 2 hours, 4 hours, however long it takes, because you're going over every inch of that body. Yep. And after examining that body so closely, how that person died. They may want to, just corroborate certain things with lab reports and blood analysis and other stuff, but how this person died, whether it's a gunshot, a stab wound, you look at all the organs. Okay, the heart is intact. There's nothing, like that's, unfortunately the body could have been in a state of, decay and, there's animals there and stuff. So it may be difficult, but, she was pretty, matter of fact that they know the cause of death. That's
what I say too. And that's what makes me believe that he is responsible, because the way her parents were talking on Dr. Phil, if anybody with a grand jury indictment, even if it's sealed, would her family know?
No.
Or nobody would know?
Yeah, they wouldn't tell.
I thought maybe her family would know.
They can't. By law, it's sealed. Like legally, they can't do it. The only way they would be able to do it if they were somehow witnesses at the grand jury. Oh yeah, he came home on this and such a date and went back and he said this. I mean, if they were testifying as witnesses in the grand jury, they would know that a grand jury is hearing this case. But outside of that, you can't release that. It's actually a crime to release grand jury material.
Okay. My final question, and I'm going to open it up to everybody else. From a attorney perspective, from a cop perspective, why do you think this case is as big as it is?
You know, we had something, and we talk about it, you know, every once in a while on Police Off the Cuff. There was a case of Brian Watkins, who came here with his family from Utah to New York City, and there was a robbery, and Brian was stabbed and killed. And it just shook the city, you know, because of the nature of it. Someone just coming here as a tourist and got pulled into this New York crime. It caused an outrage. And it actually was the impetus for the initiatives that came forward, you know, broken windows policing and all that stuff. Like, that was like the defining moment where people were like so outraged as to what happened. So here we have on TV and video this wonderful, beautiful couple. They're in love and they're together, and we see all this stuff. And then we have a missing body. It's just so intriguing. I was hooked into this case too. I was like, what? He came home without her? 10 days? I was like, what in the heck happened? Like, I couldn't wait to hear more. So I think the unique circumstances, plus we got to see so much. There's so much out there that we could see about them. And then the buffoons stumble on the van.
Yeah.
And then, they find the body 250 feet away. I mean, there's just so much here. That whole domestic violence encounter. I think that's why this is, but the facts are so unique that they shut down. They weren't talking. She was living with them. That you have to be very close with, Gabby. She's living in your house, your family, your, like, even the sister, their kids, were so close. And then she's not here. There are so many questions that everyone would have naturally. I think, that's the real shocker, is how this case unfolded and developed. It was just so shocking.
See, I find with the sister, though, with the sister's interview, and I said this yesterday, that the other night when I first saw the interview, that I really think the parents just said they split up. Don't ask them any questions about Gabby. It's going to get them upset. So say nothing. They broke up. We don't know where Gabby is at the moment. Let's just leave it at that. I can see that happening. Like, that is a perfectly legit scenario of why the sister didn't ask questions about where Aunt Gabby is. In my opinion, that is 100% probably what was said. Now hindsight's 2020. She's like, why didn't I just ask? But I really believe that's how it went down.
Yeah, and I watched her interview, and it was important to note that she told them a lot more, law enforcement, and they told her not to reveal it. She said that, they told us not to talk about it. And so when everyone was saying they're not cooperating, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, and then you hear that. So, I don't know what to make of this case. He's the logical suspect. It makes sense. But boy, did that hit me when he flew home without her. And it was apparently, right after that incident with the Moab police, and she was alive. So where was she? What was she doing? Maybe he went back there and she hooked up with some other people. And she said, you know what? I'm fine without you. Go. Take the van. Good luck. I don't know. We just don't know enough.
I agree.
And maybe she did say that. And he said, oh, yeah, well, if I can't have you, nobody can have you. Who knows?
A lot of people
really
think that.
Don't know.
A lot of people think that's the scenario. But
she's a beautiful girl. I'm sure people were talking to her, and maybe she met someone, and, oh, this guy is so sensitive, and who knows, So, and he came back and he was jealous. It could have happened. Or the opposite could have happened, where she's saying, I'm fine, I'm good. I don't like driving that thing anyway. You take it back. And he went home and thinking she's fine where she is, and she's going to do what she's going to do. And that's why they didn't say anything. I don't know. I really don't know.
I think
that's unlikely. I think it's likely that he's responsible. But you can't rule that out yet because we just don't know so much that they already know. And it concerns me that they're not taking action unless they're just going to wait to apprehend them and then unseal the indictment.
All right, I'm going to open it up. I have a couple more questions, but by the way, did you hear they got the Zodiac killer, allegedly?
Yeah, you told me that. I didn't even, I was so busy today. I had 2 federal judges on my back for cases. I was so sick with COVID. I spent a lot of time. I was in the hospital. I was in bed at home. I was on oxygen.
Aww.
So my cases just piled up. And now, federal court is so precise, the deadlines, and they don't want to hear it. So I was scrambling between 2 judges, trying to get things done.
Yeah, they allegedly found him, and he died in 2018.
Wow.
But allegedly they tied him to the 6th murder or something, and they say they got him. But
wow. Very good.
So
that's a long time.
A lot of people were asking questions, so guys, go ahead, ask your questions, and I'll remember the other stuff that I was going to ask.
Okay.
I know there was one. Hold on.
By the way, I love your chat. It was so funny. Like, I came in there and I made my silly announcement. Hey, Denise, I love the show. And then people like, hey, that's Joe Murray. And, like this. Yeah. I love it. Like, this true crime community, and everyone bounces from show to show to show. And it's just great. And in the comments, it's just wonderful. So, yeah, anything I can do, let me know.
Do you think Cassie has said too much in public? Was one of the questions.
Yes. She needs to stop, That latest interview she did with the protesters, what possessed her to do that? They're not going to go away. She's thinking if I give them something, they'll go away. No, it's the opposite. Once they see that they can get you to talk, they're never going to leave. I think it was a mistake.
Speaking of that, I firmly believe that her family, her parents, did not want her involved. That's why the lawyer is not dealing with her. Like, she made the comment, the lawyer threw me under the bus. No, he was never your attorney in the first place. So
do we know that, though? I heard you say that, and I agree with you, that, if we just don't know the relationship. Do we know if she was represented? Because a lawyer, you have to be careful of conflicts when you agree to represent someone and what the scope of your representation is. But the conflicts that may possibly be there are waivable. The law says you're allowed, if they acknowledge it and say, hey, look, there could be a point in time where, you're pointing fingers at each other. And then what do I do as the lawyer? So do you waive any of those conflicts? Do you foresee that? Number one, you ask them. And if that arises, do you waive that conflict? And of course, the lawyer, you're not bound to that lawyer at any time. The lawyer or the client can sever the relationship. So, but I think it would have been prudent for everyone in that household to be represented because, naturally they're going to be questioning to try to get information from everyone. So it's entirely possible that she was covered under that representation, but maybe not because, her saying he threw me under the bus kind of implies he was representing her, but he did one of these conflicts where, all right, I'm going to cut her loose and throw her under and protect these. That you can't do as a lawyer. You have to pull out before you do something like that and say, look, I have a conflict that I can't resolve. I got to be relieved, Yeah,
but can a lawyer represent so many different people? Like, he can represent the entire family? I thought he can only represent the people that paid him and, like, the son. Like, he could represent the parents and Brian.
It's kind of important in a situation like that because you got to look at the scope of the representation. What is he representing him for? Is he doing her divorce? Is he, or is it just for this initial, questioning about, Gabby being missing? And if none of them are responsible in any way, then I don't see an issue, and
that's true.
The only time would be if mom says, yeah, she got that phone call and I told her not to, and at that time he'd withdraw rather than take sides, one client against the other. and then say, no, you need a separate attorney. But even like if he decided, Cassie, look, you're going to have to find your own attorney, Cassie can say, well, you can't be their attorney because I've already revealed my confidential information to you,
I gotcha.
which you can use against me. So it's better to avoid the conflict in the first place because it gets messy afterwards. And all the lawyers will get kicked off the case because of the conflict. Like, I can't use information that I learned from you, my prior representation of you, and now I'm cross-examining you on the stand with all the stuff you gave me. It's just not fair. So it's better to avoid the conflict, but I guess they did an assessment and said, yeah, no, none of us have any liability. So, you know, and he's claiming that he's not responsible, then he can cover all of them.
Okay. Do you find it more difficult to present an adequate defense for a client you know is guilty?
No, it's easier. You know, if he gets convicted, hey, we tried. You know, it's easier. You know, innocent people is what keeps me awake at night. My God, I like, wow, of all the cases I gotta win this one, you know?
Desiree, did that question just get answered? I think it did. She said, what do you make of the fact the lawyer made a point of saying he's not representing the sister? You just kind of answered.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that means. Did he just sever his representation of her, or did he never represent her? And, you know, I think it's important that attorneys keep their, you know, their arrangement with clients secret and only reveal it to the people that, you know, should know, like the police or law enforcement or a prosecutor or something. You shouldn't advertise that. But, you know, in this case, he wanted to make it clear. Okay, you know.
All right. Whistle Down, I can answer that by saying we don't even know where he's getting charged yet. She said, how much time could he get for murder and on the credit card fraud, and would it be federal? Also, is it likely he walks free? He's definitely not walking free.
I don't know about that. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's yet to be one single witness of any criminal conduct. So that we know of. Again, we don't know what they know. So I wouldn't say this is a slam dunk. I think it's a slam dunk in the court of public opinion, but in a court of law where you're instructed about evidence and that discussion, which was great that you brought that issue up. Do I go bench? Do I go jury? You know, the legal principles and the weight of the evidence, the persuasiveness of the evidence. I don't know that that's a slam dunk.
Okay. Thank you, Lucy's World. Joe, now being an attorney, have you ever had to defend people that you once put away as a cop?
No, thank God. Yeah, that would have been awkward.
Okay. Do you feel like the laundry's lawyer is only for yeah, he said that earlier. Only for now, and a different criminal attorney will be brought in if he is found.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you want somebody from the jurisdiction, you know, but again, that's a big thing. Your confidence and trust and faith in the person that you have, whatever their credentials are. I mean, it's always wise to get somebody who's, you know, proficient in what they're doing. But I think that was the decision here. They had a certain level of confidence, you know, either personally knowing this attorney or through a third person. And that's why they did it. And that's the scope of his representation. They're going to get, you know, local counsel to deal with that.
Okay. Can you ask Joe if he thinks the car at the reserve was a ruse? Do you think it was a cover? Or you think that he legit took the car?
I don't know about legit taking the car, but I think that's an elaborate conspiracy that would have had to take place. And I don't know that, you know, I can really say I believe that. You know, I kind of, just having been a cop, and, you know, you're bringing down the resources of the federal government, local law enforcement on a massive search at a time that if you really wanted him to get away, why report him missing?
I agree.
Let him keep going to where he's going and be safe. I think there was a timetable, a schedule, and he was well overdue. And they were like, uh-oh, something must have happened. Let's call the police. Now, it could be said that was prearranged, and I'll be safe by this point, so you should go to the police to preserve that you're innocent. I don't know. But, I mean, we're talking about a massive conspiracy here to do all these things with so many moving parts, and I don't know if I believe that.
See, but I do believe that, but I don't think that anybody, including his family, including him, thought that it would blow up like this. I mean, the massive amount of time, money, and media coverage that this case is getting, nobody could have predicted. I mean, this is
and
like
you know,
Chris
you brought
Watts
up that great
2.0.
point about not being able to get a fair trial, and people are like, oh, he ran, he must be guilty. Really?
Nope.
I mean, do you think he get a fair trial? I don't know. That's going to be very difficult. And that may be, you know, if he did run, why he ran. There's no way that anyone's going to give me the time of day. You know, I'm guilty already, you know?
Can the judge or the prosecutor, someone in the court, can they, I don't want to say add extra time. I don't know the right way to put this. Can they, like, come down on him more due to the fact that they did spend all this money looking for him and all this time looking for him? Can that hurt him financially, or like, can they do a civil suit for it, something?
It depends on the charge, the jurisdiction, the sentencing range. If it's not a murder case and it's a lesser homicide charge where there's a range that he would be possibly sentenced to, yeah, it could impact, you know, the range of sentence he gets and fines and, you know, it's definitely a factor, an aggravating factor. If he had to be apprehended, he was a flight risk, and, you know.
Okay.
For sure.
Another question is, the lawyer sending a lot of texts to media making factual statements. Are those statements binding if Brian... Hold on, I just lost it. There we go. Are those statements binding if Brian or the parents or Cassie testifies differently?
No, because it's hearsay and it's not sworn. It's an out-of-court statement. But that's a great point, and I should explain that to people. A lot of people are very critical of this attorney for not speaking and having a press conference and explaining things. Remember, we talked about like the two biggest remedies for something like this, where it's so high profile and so prejudicial, it's so one-sided. You can do a delay of the trial, a pretrial delay, or you could do a change of venue and move it to a different jurisdiction. If you contributed, if you, the defendant, contributed to this pretrial publicity, they're not going to entertain that. They're going to say, you made your bed, now sleep in it. So he's got to, as an attorney, and I use the press a lot. I mean, if you went to my website, like I have some very high profile cases. I had the case against the former governor, Elliot Spitzer. You know, there's a lot of high profile cases, and I want to get information out because I don't want it to be so biased against my client. I had a gun case where they had a search warrant. They went into my client's house. They found like 16 or 20 different guns of all different kinds. None of them were real. And it was embarrassing because I see these cops posing, you know, like the gunshot where they lay everything out on the table and they're so proud they did this. I'm like, are you kidding me, guys? And these are airsoft guns, they're pellet guns, like they were so obviously not real guns, most of them. And the district attorney of Queens County, my former adversary that I ran against, not that I'm, you know, sorry about this, but bringing this to everyone's attention, she kept that B felony, it's a B violent felony, 10 guns or more, None of them were real. And the lab report came back within days saying none of these guns are capable of firing a shot. They're not firearms. So she kept the felony charges for over a year.
Wow.
Until I went to the press and I gave them the report saying these are not real guns, but they refused to drop these felony charges. And it was during COVID, so the governor, in his wisdom, gave them carte blanche to delay, no speedy trial. So this poor woman who has no record, never been arrested, her name is plastered everywhere. She got laid off because of COVID, but trying to get a new job. And the first thing, because he had a very unique name, the first thing they do is Google you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's a gangster. She's got, and the charges for over a year. So I went to the press and they did a big thing. A week later, they dismissed all the felony charges. I don't know why they didn't dismiss everything. One is endangering the welfare of a minor. So how could fake guns endanger a minor?
Exactly.
I don't know why they could. But going to the press is so powerful. After a year of going back and forth with the prosecutor, and they won't budge, a week later, they dropped the felony charges. They were so embarrassed by that coverage. So I use the press. But if you use the press, you're contributing to the pretrial publicity, and you're not going to get those remedies that we talked about.
That's true. All right, another question. Sissy, thank you, and Lynn, welcome. Why do you think the family would not speak to Gabby's family even before they knew she was missing?
It's malpractice as an attorney to allow your client to discuss any facts about this case with anyone. You just can't. And that's probably the worst scenario, because what do you say? What do you say? And people say things, they're so like, they want to console them. They want to say something. And before you know it, yeah, she said this to me, and it gets twisted and turned. And, it's so dangerous. So that would have been my advice anyway, without me being present. If they would agree to meet with us and we talk, I would do that. But I don't think the Petito family had any interest in sitting down with them unless they were going to talk to them. They don't want to hear, their empty relation.
I agree. Carolyn, thank you. How much or little evidence would Ellie need to charge the parents? What are possible charges? 3-point question. 2-point question. What are the possible charges they could face?
I don't have any facts to work with really about, and I haven't looked in the jurisdiction what their version would be, but you can be an accessory to the crime, and we call it accessory after the fact, if you act to conceal any of their, liabilities. So like tampering with evidence, stuff like that, they could be charged with. And the only scenario I could think of is the van came back, and it would be so hard to prove, because you'd have to prove that he revealed this to them, that there was a crime, and they're cleaning the van to remove evidence. It's just such a high burden. I don't see it happening. But everyone's talking about they're helping them in this, Brian, in this flight of his. Again, it's just so hard, because for most of the time he was uncharged. So, you're allowed to talk to your son. You're allowed to give him food and water. You're allowed, whatever. So I really don't, it's so hard to, with no facts, to say what they could possibly have done or be charged with. You open with that. What if he comes back and says, well, they told me to do this and they helped me do, I just don't think the government is interested, at this point, with him being a cooperator against, that would be like, the local hitman, gets arrested and they want to have John Gotti testify against them. No, they want John Gotti,
Okay. Let's see. Back up.
All great questions, though. These people are really tuned in, and the law, and I have great conversations like after, in the chat, in the comments and stuff. and then people start emailing me, and it's great. I have like relationships with people through email and stuff. I love this community. And you know what? As a trial lawyer, listening to this feedback, like I'm thinking as a former cop and a lawyer, like this is the most powerful evidence. And then I hear these comments, I'm like, wow, you didn't even look at what I was saying. And you're stuck on this over here, and this is what's important to you. I'm like, wow, I got to rethink this. I got to be you are when I say to people, I'm like, who do you think's opinion is more important? Yours are.
But that's what's
You're
scary.
the ones that are voting guilty or not guilty.
But that's
so if I can't
scary.
persuade you, I'm done.
No, that's what's scary, that half these people, not in my chat, but I see the craziest conspiracy theories. People on other channels with like a couple thousand people in there, and their conspiracy theories are over the top. And I'm sitting there like, where are you even getting this from?
Yeah.
And that's on a jury pool, and that's what's scary.
Jurors.
That's scary.
No, I talk to juries, and I'm like, listen, I have 6 kids in my family. And then like for Thanksgiving, we always have Uncle Mike and Aunt Jerry, and we have a big table. And we are, Irish Italian family that is very opinionated. We're not like, there's a mix politically. Our Thanksgiving dinner table is always loud and opinionated. I said, that's what I want this jury to be. I don't want you sitting back and just going with the majority and trying to appeal. I want people who want to make their voice heard. I want that Thanksgiving dinner table discussion when you're back there. I want to hear you guys, going back and forth with the evidence. That's justice, So
I agree.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
important.
That's why these.
And that's what we have here. There's so many people. I haven't been looking at the chat, but there's so many people that have opinions, particularly that domestic violence call, which I thought those cops were amazing. I mean, they went above and beyond. That would never happen in New York City. I just want people to know that.
That's what I kept saying.
Never happened.
And everybody, are you fucking kidding me? How did you? I cursed, but. How could you not see it? This was so straight up. I'm like, the cops did everything they could have done and then some. I don't think the cops were bad at all. Like, and you're right. I grew up in New York. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's not like that. And I was blown away at the amount of people. We're talking thousands of people that, the cops were so wrong. And I'm like, no, the cops were great. Like, I don't think they could have done any more than they did with the outcome of change.
I always try to use that like comparative. Would I want them to respond to my job, And I would love for those cops to be my local neighborhood cops, because they took such effort to consider everything.
Yep.
And that bearded officer, I don't know his name, but like he was aggressively looking for the truth. When he went, that latest video that came out and he went into the car, he was looking all over Gabby, saw like, what's that? What's on your arm? He's looking for, was she the victim or he the victim? And even when you have mutual combatants in a domestic violence situation, you're supposed to do a primary aggressor analysis. So normally we would lock up both people and bring them in, but that just doesn't work. It's counterintuitive, because they both will have lawyers. They will both have the right to remain silent. Now, if Gabby is facing criminal charges, her lawyer is going to be like, you're not testifying against Brian, because you're opening yourself up to your own liability. You're actually going to be admitting hitting him. I can't have you do that. Similarly, Brian's lawyer is going to say, you can't testify against Gabby because you're going to have to testify that you did hit her. You're admitting crimes. So, it never goes. When you have both parties arrested and charged, the DA drops both of them a lot of times right at arraignment, because they know they can't prosecute this. So they encourage, some require it, they have to do this primary aggressor analysis. Why? Because you only lock up one. The other one is the victim who will testify against the perpetrator. And it's a tough analysis to do. There are a lot of factors, and they did it textbook. I thought it was brilliant.
Mike, I absolutely disagree with that, because I've said the same thing, and I'm not law enforcement. He said, wow, they didn't follow protocol, covering for your brothers now. And I disagree with that. 100% disagree with that, because they went above and beyond what they needed to do or what they had to do. And I just think people aren't giving them enough credit. They really went above and beyond. They could have just locked her up, put him somewhere, but they would have locked her up, and they chose not to. Would that have made the difference 3 weeks later? Probably not, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but the point is they couldn't do it. Actually, you know, I felt that you could have justified 3 different scenarios. Lock them both up, lock him up, lock her up, or 4 scenarios, but don't lock anyone up. It was that close a call. And think about what he did right before, because they were talking about arresting her, but giving her just an appearance ticket and separating them. And they have an order that they serve on her and you know, advise him, and he'll get a copy. No contact. No contact. And if you violate that order, that's a crime. So they were going to do that. But then he's like, you know, I don't think this guy's in any danger. It's such a close call. Let me go back to the statute. Statute says it has to be intend to cause an injury and do cause an injury. So he, if you remember, he went back to her and says, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think about it. Very important. Depends on how you answer this. When you hit him, were you intending to hurt him or cause him pain? You know, and she said, no. Well, what were you doing? I was trying to get his attention or so. So once hearing that, he was like, okay, that's not probable cause, because the statute requires intend to cause an injury and do cause an injury.
Now, from
like you know, just to answer Mike, if this is a cover-up, he would never get on the phone and call his boss. He's asking for direction from his boss. That's not someone who's covering up. That's someone who's faced with a compelling, close call. Boss, how do I do this? You know, like, it's so important to get these situations right. And I think they read this statute, they interviewed the independent witness, and then they went back and talked to both parties. You know, like, they really did a thorough investigation. I thought it was with good intent, and they were happy to lock her up because at that time, that's what they felt. So I don't think this was anything other than them using their discretion, you know, in a case where it wasn't that clear. And I thought it was brilliant. And I'd want them in my neighborhood. And that's the, you know, the test.
From an attorney perspective, now my thought was, when the cop said, you know, this is going to seal her fate, whether he or she intended. Let's say this happened in New York. As an attorney, my thought, the first question I would ask, you only hit somebody if you're going to hurt them. There's no other reason that you would put a hand on someone. So I don't understand the point of that question, because, thank you, Tawny. I just, like, if you shoot a gun at someone, you intend to kill them. Like, that's the whole point of you shooting a gun at someone. So I would naturally assume if someone hits me, they're doing it with the intent to hurt me, whether it be to shut me up or whatnot, but the intent is to hurt me. So I don't understand that line of questioning.
There is something that I have to explain to you about the law, and I'm just speaking from my New York experience. I haven't examined it in, you know, Wyoming. That's where they were, right? The law considers there are 3 real levels of acts that are illegal: felonies, misdemeanors, and then we call them like violations or petty offenses.
Okay.
Only felonies and misdemeanors are crimes.
Okay.
You can only arrest for a petty offense, a violation, if you witness it, like a traffic violation. A cop can't come on the scene after the fact and say, I'm looking at these cars, you failed to signal, you crossed the double yellow line, and you were speeding, I'm giving you all tickets. You can't. You have to witness the infraction.
Okay.
So harassment under the law, I explained to you assault, intend to cause an injury and do cause an injury. Harassment is physical contact that no injury occurs. And then there's attempted assault. Maybe, like you said, they were trying to injure the person, but there was no injury.
Okay.
So if it was harassment, where she smacked him in the face, there was no injury, you can't arrest for that. So if they interviewed that guy that called in, I don't know if it's the same person they interviewed on the body camera, but there was the 911 call that says, oh, he was slapping her. First of all, he didn't say where he was slapping her. He didn't describe, oh, and she was recoiling and in pain or fell on the floor. There was nothing to go on unless they were able to get that guy. But when he looks at her and she has no injury that he can connect to what was alleged, and again, we don't know if he slapped her in the face, slapped her or pushed her, and we don't know. It wasn't described in that call, and I don't believe they actually spoke with him. Without that, the officer only has harassment, an allegation of harassment that he didn't witness. And she's denying, like she denied it when they first went up there. Legally, he can't make an arrest for that. Now, if the person said he wound up and punched her and she moved out of the way and just grazed her and didn't cause an injury, that would constitute an attempted assault.
Okay.
Which is still a misdemeanor, and they could arrest without witnessing. So it's just so hard. Everyone was hung up on, didn't you hear the 911 call? He was slapping her. Slapping her where? Did it hurt her? Did it cause her an injury? You need more than that. You would have to witness that to make that arrest. It's a tough thing because people are like, you mean that's legal? They're allowed? No, it's not legal. And you could be charged, if he was charged with a crime, a misdemeanor or a felony, that would be an add-on offense. If she said, he also slapped me in the face, didn't cause an injury, they would add harassment as a charge because it's an allegation. But the power of the police officer to arrest, he would have to observe it or have another misdemeanor or a felony to arrest her for.
Okay.
And don't forget, don't lose sight of this. When you have a case like that cross-complaint situation or they make an arrest and there really wasn't the evidence there, the prosecutor has to prove proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If they can't get that, they're going to dismiss the charge. And what is this guy going to do? Get a lawyer. And who's the first person he's going to sue? That cop violated my rights, my civil rights. And the cop gets sued. So they got to get this right, Now,
forget that you're an attorney, go back to being an officer.
Okay.
The end of that tape, and this has been a cause for big discussion. The end of that tape, the cop was talking to Brian about his wife and, what to do and that he's older than him and you would think they were best friends.
Right.
That's not normal, though. Even I know in New York, a person can't even go in a cop car. Like, that was ruled out a long time ago. Unless you're being arrested, you can't go in a cop car. So obviously
you can. No, that's not true. You can. We put witnesses in the car all the time.
Okay.
We put people who are, suspected of crimes. Like we're allowed to do something called a show up. So let's just say you called and said somebody was breaking into my house. I looked at the window, you give a description, and they grab a guy fitting that description. So they can't, now they want to bring you, because the show up means you now have to go and look at the person. It can't be overly coercive, like he's in handcuffs, there's cops all around them. So they have him sit down in the back of the car, the door's locked, like he can't get out, and no, but leave the door open, but the other door, like just security wise, there's a cop standing here, there's a cop standing here, and he's sitting there uncuffed in the back of the car. And they'll put you in a car, just drive by and say, hey, could you take a look? Can you make him out? Is that what he was wearing? Could you ID him by looking at his face? You can. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you can put someone in the car. And I think what they did was appropriate. I even heard people being critical.
Hold on. You don't think that Brian and that cop were a bit too chummy? Like,
that's what you're supposed to do. And I'm not saying the dialogue, but you're at a domestic violence situation. You should be talking to both parties to try to get a feel for what's going to happen when we leave. And I think that conversation, bringing down the temperature, was entirely appropriate. Whether or not sharing your personal business is a good idea, that's a judgment call for the cop. There's nothing illegal about it. He can if he wants to. But they're trying to bring down the temperature. These are two people who are involved in a very tense situation. When you arrive on the scene, she's hysterical, crying, he's nervous, and, okay, now you're about to leave these people. And as a cop, you're thinking, what's going to happen when we leave? So talking to him, and now he's smiling, his temperature's down, they talk to her. Okay, we're going to make arrangements. We're going to do this, that, what. That's appropriate. That's good policing. And I know everyone's so critical of that, and I disagree.
Okay. That was my question on that. Alan Volpe says, cop noticed the injury to Gabby, which she explained how it happened. Cop lied about speaking to 2 witnesses. Cop admitted to Brian that the witnesses saw him slap Gabby. There's no actual question in there. It was just the ABC.
Yeah, those are conclusory statements. I didn't see the injury. She said he grabbed my face and his nails, like it hurt, and maybe there was a mark. It has to be like a laceration. It can't just be like a little, that's not an injury. I mean, I do worse than that shaving myself, So the law has said, it's been interpreted here in New York, that even substantial pain could be considered an injury. So if you come up on the scene, you see somebody's like all red and swollen, that would articulate an injury, but it didn't look like, it was that clear. She's like, he grabbed my face and I felt his nails and, so maybe there was a spot, but I don't know. I mean, that's what I mean. This was such a tough call. I would not have faulted him if he arrested both of them or one of them, because I think, when he went to Brian, he was like, yeah, what's that? What's that on your face? And then when they had him outside the car, they were pointing. These guys were doing their job as cops, looking for, and not just relying on what they said, because they both said nobody hit anyone initially, and then, what happened here? We got a caller. He confronted Gabby. We got a witness, independent witness, who says he was smacking you. And she's like, oh, yeah, see, he was, but I hit him first. And, what do you do with that? It's so hard to interpret, what happened. It's very difficult. But, without a real clear-cut injury, it's hard. It's a real judgment call. And I think he knew that and called his boss. I want to get this right, boss. Here's what I got, Because it was very tough.
Wouldn't you agree?
And his advice to the other officer was, it's your call. I'll defend you either way. That's how I feel. I will defend whatever decision they make here because it was that close.
Now, wouldn't you agree with me? If they were going to arrest somebody, she was going to get arrested, not him.
Yes, she was determined to be the primary aggressor. Like that independent witness, he asked him, was he like trying to hurt her or what? Or was it more defensive? You know, who was doing it well? And the positioning, he was in the driver's seat. She was outside the car hitting him, you know, while he's in the car. That's the aggressor. She could have retreated. He can't retreat. So you look for things like that to determine who's the primary aggressor. And I think they rightly decided she was the primary aggressor. And you can't make your decision based on gender bias. And he pointed that out too. I mean, I really liked the job they did.
I thought
because
they
they're
did a
right.
good job
You
too.
can't discriminate. Well, she's the woman, you know. But he was like, yeah, she was the one that went over to him. He was in the car. We have a witness saying this. That's powerful. So she was the primary aggressor.
Alan, the things that you're saying are why I say that this man can't get a fair trial. Hindsight's 2020. Nobody, and I go back to Chris Watts on this, nobody could have anticipated Gabby was going to end up dead. There was no signs of that as from a cop's perspective during that argument that that she was going to end up dead. They were thinking more he was going to end up dead, not her. So I find it, I don't know what the right word is, but I find it, that mentality of looking at something after we know everything we know to judge something that happened prior to us knowing everything is completely unfair. It's very easy to say, oh, the signs were there. The signs were only there because we know the end result. The signs weren't there if you don't know the end result.
You're going to get sued arresting people on signs. You got to arrest on evidence that you can articulate and prove. You know, we all may suspect certain things, but that's not what our Constitution says. It has to be a reasonable, articulable belief that would another reasonable person interpreting it would believe that he committed a crime. You know, or her. So, and you can't have gender bias in examining that. You have to look at the acts, you know, look at what they did, not just who they are. I agree. Very important. But I do want to say something else because I can't, you know, I call it like I see it. And I've been criticized for this opinion. I'm curious as to what people think. I do believe if there was an arrest of Gabby, because that's who they're going to arrest. But if they arrested one or the other, you arrest both, they get out the same day and the case is dismissed. You arrest one, the first thing that happens is you go before a judge and a judge issues a temporary order of protection, a full stay away temporary order of protection. No contact, physical, no contact, social media, telephone, nothing, text messages, because they want to just, you know, there's a violent situation in this relationship. We want to put that on pause, separate them, no contact, and get to the bottom of this. So that would have happened. And the court date for domestic violence cases, they don't linger them out there very long. They want you back in. So it may have altered their plans as to where they were going, whether or not they were going to have contact, because quite often people do violate the order and get back together. But these are, in my opinion, I don't know this, but they seem like first timers. Like, I don't think they've convicted felons that have done prison time. Like, these seem to be young kids, you know, who are not criminals. And perhaps there is a DV history, but nobody has discussed it. So my impression is when a judge threatens you at an arraignment and says, if you violate this order, Brian or Gabby, depends on who's arrested, I'll incarcerate you. If I find out you disregarded my order and you had contact, I'll put you in. That's pretty intimidating. And that may have impacted them to change their plans, hire a lawyer, you know, to defend the case separately, and then alter their plans that ultimately put them on the path to where her body was found. I think there's a strong possibility if someone was arrested it would have changed the outcome. But it's still, you know, anything goes. Anything could have happened. Maybe it wouldn't have happened there. It would have happened somewhere else, you know, closer to where they were. So it's so hard to predict. But I do think, you know, that possibly could have changed the outcome, or is more likely to have changed the outcome. And I'd be curious to hear what your viewers think of that, because I've been criticized by that.
It's back and forth. But my King of Kings comment, Black Velvet, I want you to listen carefully. People must separate their own emotions from the facts of the case. And I couldn't agree more. Black Velvet said, well, she's dead now because of the incompetence of the buddy-buddy chit-chat, while Gabby was clearly highly distressed. I highly disagree with that. The cops did not...
that's the job of the cops. Take the temperature down. Take it down. You know, there was a guy...
She's not dead because of the cops.
Who was killed in the Bronx in a domestic violence case. You know, he ended up... A broken mirror severed his femoral artery, and he died. He bled out during a domestic... They're so dangerous. So when you get one, you try to bring down the temperature right away. You talk to them. You feel them out. Is this person rational? Are they okay? Or are they enraged? And I think that's appropriate doing that. They may not like the type of dialogue they had, but that was appropriate, good police work.
And also, and I've stated this before, I learned this firsthand. Unfortunately, it would have been better than her being dead, but a domestic violence arrest on your record can ruin you for the rest of your life.
So true. I talked about that. You know, like I use the pistol permit as an example, but employment opportunities, you may want to go into police work, and you have to reveal all of this, whether or not it ends in a dismissal. And you know why? They can still hold it against you because in criminal court, it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And I try to reference OJ, unless that's too long ago, people don't know. OJ killed, well, you know, he was accused of killing 2 people, and he was found not guilty at trial for the criminal case, but then was sued for wrongful death, where it's just a preponderance, and found responsible for their deaths. So just like that, a police department or employer can say, well, not so much an employer. The civil rights law protects people unless they're convicted. But if you're applying for any type of like security clearance or something like that, pistol permit, they're allowed to look at that, the underlying acts, and make their own determination as to how much weight they give it. You can always challenge it, but that is something that could preclude you, because not only are you charged with it, even if it's dismissed, there's also that order of protection, you know, that's there. And, you know, it's just ugly. It's on your record. It will forever be there. You get stopped by an officer. It's entered into NCIC. They run it and they're like, oh, okay. You get on a plane. I've had plenty of clients that were like, Joe, I got pulled off the plane because they wanted to make sure that he's not traveling with the person he's not supposed to have contact with. So it's very onerous to have that. It's embarrassing, and you know, it affects your ability to get employment. It's a big deal. And the libertarian in me is arresting someone should be a last resort. And that's why I love what they did, because they really, in a case where it was really such a close call, arrest him, her, both, or nobody. I'm glad they chose the nobody, honestly, because, you know, I really do think our fundamental freedoms, if you're going to take someone's freedom away, remove them from society, you better have that right. You better have your ducks in a row and do it right.
And even if they don't, I have an arrest domestic. Me and my ex both got arrested together. If I knew I was going to get the domestic, I would have bashed him over the head with a 2x4 because I was getting the same charge. When I really didn't touch him at all, but he decided we should both be arrested. That ruined my life. My education went out the window. I can't work with kids. I couldn't even volunteer. Let me ask you something. You were both arrested. We were both arrested, but he's a union.
How were you prosecuted? Unless there were independent witnesses.
It was dropped out. There were independent witnesses on his side. His wife at the time was
So your cross complaints, but they dropped both of the cases,
they
right?
dropped it to a
Violation
something in public, making noise in public, whatever it is.
of disorderly conduct.
Disorderly conduct, or making, it was something to do in public. And
Yeah.
I couldn't even volunteer at Palm Beach Sheriff's Department. And I went for my master's in criminal justice. I could not even volunteer because they told me I had this domestic. I said, yeah, but it was pleaded out. Doesn't matter. You were arrested for a domestic. It ruined my everything I worked for. I went to be a probation officer, parole officer, could not do it because it's domestic. Changed the whole course of my life from something I didn't even do. That's why I said if I knew it was going to end up like that, I would have hit him with a 2x4. I was going to get the same charge anyway. So when I, unless you're in that situation, like for him, a domestic meant nothing. He's a union pipe fitter. Domestic means nothing. But for the average person, a domestic is not a charge you want when you're 23 years old. That will stay with him forever.
Yeah, it's not good.
The cops did the right thing. They really did. And
I believe that. I'm a guy who arrested people, like I was a cop and I took people's freedom away, and I always respected that. That's an awesome power to remove somebody in custody, take them into custody. It's a Fourth Amendment seizure. I'm seizing that person. You better have that right. That's government intrusion on our lives, and it's something that I don't like, and I try to fight whenever I can when it's an overreach. And I see a lot of it now, more and more, this overreach of the government. But that's what our Constitution is founded on, personal freedoms. Those framers were so oppressed by King George, across the pond, so far away. And when they set this government up, they set it up in such a way to preserve our liberties and freedom. And we're slowly letting it slip away. And I'm scared by that.
Well, I know in New York they are. That's for sure.
Terrible.
Were you eligible for expunge? Iowa doesn't expunge. It's happened in Iowa. They don't expunge. In like 20 years, I can get it expunged. But Iowa doesn't expunge charges like that. All right. Questions. In Indiana, you can't go field trips with your own kids if you have a felony. Well, domestic isn't a felony. It's like a whole... it could be a felony, but it's like a whole different realm. It's like, oh, you have a domestic?
There's so many collateral consequences to being a convicted felon. The legislature is finally picking up on it and realizing it, and they're amending it and changing it. The voter disenfranchisement. I never understood that, to be honest with you. Why do we take people's right to vote away if they're convicted as a felon? Like, what do they do? They get into your house somehow as a... I don't know what that power is. I know someone that went to jail for that.
I know someone
that went to jail for that. It's just some punitive way. I'm sorry?
I know someone that went to jail for that back in 2000. The election, not Trump. It was the one before Trump. I forgot.
16. 16 he got in.
I think it was
2020 he got out.
No, that was Trump.
16 he got in, 2020 he got out. So it would have been 12, yeah.
Maybe, it was 12 then. But he was a convicted felon, and he decided he was voting, and he did, and he got arrested for it.
Yeah, it doesn't shock me that so many people, it's so lax, the voter thing. But the right to vote, like, who came up with that? If you're a convicted felon, you can't vote.
I agree.
We want to encourage people to vote. That Boo de Blasio got in on such a low, I don't know if it was in the teens. Like, the voter turnout with voter apathy in New York was at its worst. And the only people that came out were these progressives who voted him in, just like when AOC got in. She came from nowhere and, overtook, what's his name? Oh, he was the Queens County Democratic chair. He was thought to be like the next Speaker of the House. and he took that race for granted. You know, he hadn't been appearing. You know, they had debates. He sent like, you know, emissaries on his behalf, like he was an absentee landlord. You know, what the hell is his name? Crowley. Last name was Crowley. Oh, I'm losing my mind. Getting old. I have to embrace this dementia. You know. But anyway, yeah, he just, you know, was asleep at the wheel, and she came in from behind and overtook him. You know, that's what de Blasio did. I mean, he never. I mean, the guy is so far out there in his beliefs and policies. He never would have gotten in if people actually came out and voted. That's why it's so important, and we need more people to vote. You know, they were talking about allowing people in prison to vote, which, you know, I don't like that. But if that's what it takes to motivate people to come out and come to the polls because you're afraid of people in prison voting, then maybe we should.
Exactly.
Maybe we should. I mean, I think it's crazy, but if that's what it takes for people to take some ownership of our government, this is our government. And I can't stand it when I talk to people like, I don't want to register. Then I got to do jury duty. And I got like, they think they're part of this database now that they have to, you know, they'll get called upon. It's just horrible how people don't vote. It's just outrageous.
Okay, I'm going to hide because I haven't voted in a couple of years now. So I'm just going to hide now.
You of all people.
I'm going to hide.
Of all people.
Because there hasn't been a president that I liked, and
what do you mean,
I haven't
president?
lived
President's
here,
the last
but
thing
I
that should be
haven't
on your
lived
mind.
here long enough to know the politics of where I live. Before here, I was only when I was in New York, I voted, but
all politics is local.
For those, hold on, for those that don't know New York politics right now or New York police, New York has changed heavily. And the police have like almost no power anymore. Criminals have all the power. The people that are running New York City are destroying it to like really destroying it. And there is nothing anyone can do about it. So police, attorneys,
because
everybody
people aren't
is
voting. We need people to vote.
Okay. Okay, so if you live in New York, make sure you vote. No, but the guy...
There are some great candidates. I'll give you an example. I ran for district attorney in 2019. It was really hard because all the changes were coming. So the election was November of 2019. The changes that were coming, bail reform, closing Rikers Island, all that stuff was happening January of 2020. Mm-hmm. The laws were already passed, but they weren't taking effect until January. So it's so hard to get people out to vote to begin with when things are happening. Mm-hmm. Imagine like me trying to tell, yes, coming in 2020, they're going to release 4,000 prisoners in January of 2020 who are going to be back on the street because of this bail reform. Then they're doing discovery reform. The next thing up is parole reform, where they're going to allow people out, you know, way ahead of their sentence that they receive. You know, I was trying to like sound the alarm. The British are coming. I was trying to like ring the bell and tell people, and they're like, because it doesn't affect their everyday life right now. But there's a great candidate, friend of mine, who's running for Manhattan District Attorney. Now, highly qualified. He was a prosecutor. He's in the military. He's a JAG. He's a major in the Army. He's done so much in his career as a lawyer. I think he's a great lawyer. But here's the difference. And I can't believe people would even consider the Democratic candidate, Alvin Bragg, has already said, I'm not going to prosecute resisting arrest. Mm-hmm. What message does that send to criminals? Fight your ass off and try to get away. If you do good, if you don't worry. I'm not going to charge you with resisting arrest. Mm-hmm. He's not going to prosecute petty larceny under $250. Now, you know, the policy behind it to the naive is we don't want to punish poverty. These are people that have no money and they're stealing to feed themselves. It sounds wonderful, but in reality, that's not what's happening. People are just walking into stores and grabbing what they want and walking out.
Yep.
You know, and the little shops that all over Manhattan who are getting, raped by this policy, what do? The business people, the store owners, the shop owners,
Yep.
they're terrified. But there are so many things like this that are there, but the public seems to have like blinders and earmuffs on. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to see it. But hopefully, we're hoping, the election's less than a month away. There's been so much crime, the rise in crime, the rise in violent crime, that people are finally waking up. And they're going to go to the polls and say, whoa, this is, all right, enough. The experiment failed, guys.
Exactly.
Let's get some law and order back here,
Exactly
but
right. They need
you got to
to
vote. And your vote counts and it matters.
Because there's a lot of cops that want out of New York City at this point.
Yep. Good cop.
Question. Johnny, that's a good point too. From a legal standpoint, this is a big question that nobody seems to be able to answer.
Okay.
He stole her van. That was her van. And why isn't he being charged for her van?
The same reason why I don't think he should have been charged with this unauthorized access device.
Okay.
Here they are on a how many months were they out on the road together?
June
They're
2nd,
engaged, they're in love, and they're taking this tour around the country in this van, kind of sleeping in the van together. They're documenting it. She's got like a video blog of what they're doing. I've only seen him driving, and she said she doesn't like to drive the van. So what do we have? Consent, implied consent. I know the FBI has done a very thorough job. I shouldn't say I know. I reasonably believe they have, by tracing their credit cards, tracing their phones, finding out where they went, and getting surveillance cameras that still may have footage. So let's just say they pull up into a gas station and they have the surveillance camera. He's driving, she's in the car. So what does that tell you about his authority to drive the car? Obviously, she's not objecting to it. She gave him consent. So they're driving the car, and he's perhaps, when they get the receipts and the records, maybe they decided for this trip that the money that was in her account would pay for this trip. And so she hands him the card, and he puts it in. And, this is what we call implied consent. If he had consent, and you can give consent to people to use your property. I tried to explain to Bill Cannon when I was on his show. I was like, Bill, if I give you, my car and tell you, you're going away. Oh, it's a convertible. You're going to love it. Use it. Take it. Enjoy it. You're my friend. And then I have a heart attack. He doesn't know I had a heart attack, and I gave him permission. Should he be locked up for stealing my car?
Yeah, but
do you think that makes sense?
No, but you could. But if you didn't have a heart attack and you wanted to charge him for stealing your car, you could, and legally,
no, you
it
can't.
would be stolen.
You have to. Someone has to say that his authority to use that car was revoked, and he continued to use it. That's the definition of stealing property. You don't have permission or authority to use it. That's unauthorized use. It's not even stealing, but it's in the case of a car, they would charge unauthorized use. And if you try to permanently deprive somebody of their property, you're stealing it.
Okay. All right.
But, he's got, the law punishes you on your mental state, not so much the act. And he had no criminal intent whatsoever. He had authority to use it. Unless you can prove that he knew she was dead, and, thereby revoked his authority. He no longer had any authority. But that's why I said on his show, I was like, listen, I want to know who that witness is who walked into the grand jury and said he no longer had permission and authority to use that, and he knew that, and he still went and withdrew that money.
Hold up.
That's a crime.
You just said something, though, that ties in where they don't need a witness. They found her body. Then they charged him for that charge, which tells me they know he killed her. That's what revoked their...
It's possible if he had knowledge that his authority was revoked. It's entirely possible, but that's what I said. Who's the witness that went into the grand jury and said that? Because I'm not aware of any witness.
The coroner.
Who...
Coroner found...
No, when I say he revoked his authority, you got to tell him, hey, listen, I want that car back, Bill. I'm sorry. I'm not authorizing you to use it anymore. I'm revoking your license to use my car.
Yes.
You're granting them a license to use your property.
But what you just said, and maybe you don't realize you said it, but what you said was
tell me.
That if he knew she was dead, then it's automatically revoked. That if he took the car. So that tells me the coroner confirmed he's the one that killed her. That's why they were able to do a charge of, that he drove her.
Oh, 100%. If that's what they have, the evidence is probable cause. A reasonable person of a reasonable mind would believe the facts constitute that he committed this crime. Yeah, that would be enough. But
being that they
what
don't
I'm saying is
that.
We don't know. It may be possible, and that witness may be out there, and it could be the coroner, and it could be a secret grand jury that, or it could even be the same grand jury that heard both indictments. One was sealed and one was unsealed. We just don't know.
No. I'm saying that because they haven't charged him with that, but they charged him with the credit card. Is it possible?
Why would they not charge him with the homicide, murder, manslaughter, whatever?
Or the stealing of the van?
Use that witness who says he killed her in the credit card thing.
That's what I'm saying. Why use them for the credit card and not the van? Based on your exact theory of revoking privileges, why the credit card and not the van?
Yeah.
And if he really flew home, she was petrified to be alone. She didn't want to be alone. I have until I see plain proof, I don't know. I don't even know if I believe he came home anymore. Like, I know the lawyer said it, but show me the flight. And
that's good. You're a great juror. You're a great juror because you want to see the evidence. Mm-hmm. And that's good. You don't want to take people's word for it. Nope. Show me the evidence. And that's what you want for a juror.
Because looking at the circumstances...
I would pick you.
Thank you. Looking at the circumstances, she was freaking out about being alone. She didn't like driving the van. But here she is, sitting in the middle of, I was going to say Ohio, sitting in the middle of Utah, Wyoming, wherever, and she's just sitting there for a week by herself. If that was the case, where's the social media postings? You should be nonstop posting since you had nothing else to do. I feel like there's something missing in this week that he allegedly came home. Where was she?
There's a lot missing. A lot missing.
There's a big piece of this chunk that something is missing. We know she was alive, but there's something missing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she died and there was a duplicate of her. Like someone that looked like her that he was with. I don't know, but that's dumb. But there's something missing about he allegedly came home. Her social media was not, amped up during that week. So I don't believe she was just sitting in a hotel doing social media. She wasn't driving around because she hated driving around. And I don't know. There's just something missing from that. I don't know what it is though.
Yeah. There's a lot we don't know that, you know, the FBI may know, because don't forget, they get tips from people. Hey, I think I saw her at, you know, the Sly Fox, you know, the bar, and she was there with a couple friends. I could swear it was her. They go, they get surveillance cameras. Like, damn, she's here. Where's Brian? You know, and so the facts that they're learning, and they're trying to retrace her steps. They're trying to just, you know, using the cell phones and stuff. I guarantee you they know so much more than what we know. So much more, because such a high profile case, people remembering, like the Bethunes, who, you know, I remember that van when we were going down that road.
Wow.
There are a lot of people who are probably calling in saying, hey, I ran into them, or I ran into him or her. And the FBI doing what they do best, tracking them down, getting, you know, records, and we'll put that all together. And I think, you know, what we know is entirely different than what they know. And that's why it's so difficult, and it's entirely dangerous speculating, because look what's happening. God forbid this family, you know, like they're innocent. I mean, their lives are ruined. You know, remember the bomber? They did a Netflix thing on it. The guy from the Olympics in Atlanta that they set up for this as the fall guy for the bombing. His life was over. Like, they destroyed him.
Yep.
You know, being wrongfully accused, Marty Tankcliffe, this poor guy with a false confession, 17 years in prison. But another guy who took, you know, the lemons and made lemonade, he got out, he became an attorney, and he's fighting for other people now. I'm just so humbled by him that he went through that horrible experience, you know, and being accused and convicted of killing your parents, losing your parents. Losing one parent is bad enough. You lost both your parents, and the world thinks you did it.
Yep.
What horror that must have been to go through that for 17 years.
What about my favorite girl, Nora Jackson? She's another one that she was blamed for the horrible murder of her mom, and she didn't do it.
Yeah.
Quick
I
question.
just, you know, I'm so afraid, because law enforcement does this on purpose and for good reason. They withhold a lot of information, and then the public runs wild with what's out there. God forbid we get this wrong. That family, you know, I mean, how can they live? And they're always going to be, you know, under suspicion of, even if they get cleared. Yeah, but I think they, you know, look what they did. They wouldn't even talk to them, and their lives are over. As they knew it, their lives are over.
I agree. Quick question about FBI search. Why do you think, now Brian left his phone at home, so they're not tracking it there. Why do you think that they have spent so much money and manpower at this reserve when there's not even a legit phone there?
See, you got to remember, we were just talking about this, we don't know what they know. So let's say, for example, he left the house on such and such a day. They're going to go out and get cameras and get, you know, okay, this is the car he was driving. It went this way. It would have to go through this intersection or that intersection. Let's check both. Oh, he popped up over here. He popped up over here. It's very hard to go anywhere without popping up somewhere on an easy pass or, you know, something. A speed camera, you know, like, God help us, they're just burying us here in New York with speed cameras and red light cameras. There's so much out there technology-wise, so that the FBI may have confirmed that he went there on their own, independent, just following the information they got. You know, one of the powers they have is it's illegal to lie to a federal officer, particularly in an investigation. You know, remember the Martha Stewart case, and it has to be a material false statement. But when you're talking about a missing person, and someone who's, you know, a person of interest. I hate using that term, but, you know, because he's a suspect. Why aren't we calling him a suspect? That's what he is. When you're lying about that, materially saying, oh, he left on this day and he went here, and that's, you know, that puts you in legal jeopardy. So if the parents told the government, the FBI, that, and they went there and corroborated, then why not put the resources there, you know?
It just seems like an awful lot of manpower when he didn't have a phone, so they're not tracking a phone. Mm-hmm. And now today there was police activity there, more police activity. They have drones. I can't for the life of me understand how this 23-year-old kid who doesn't have a criminal record can evade police this long and still not be caught if he's in that area.
I'm not familiar with the area, but it's been described as 25,000 acres of land that's got alligators, and you know, it's kind of rough terrain. To
Which
do
is
a
why
search.
I don't think he's there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know enough about that. That's not something I have a lot of experience with, but I do know they have drones and infrared. So I kind of agree with you. I think it would be hard for somebody to evade detection with all this technology we now have, you know?
Lakers, what's your question? I've been waiting for you to ask a question. What's your question? I don't think he's there either, Gray. I really don't. I think he's long gone. And I think he had a good 4-day head start. And I don't think he's there. Do I think he's in the Appalachian? No. Do I think he's somewhere in a hotel? Yeah, I do. Chris who? Nelly. Please don't tell me Chris from Interview Room. Gators can eat a whole body. Yeah, they can. I think it's important if they got an attorney. Yeah, nobody knows. I see a lot of people asking that. Nobody knows when they got an attorney.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris Laundrie.
Yeah, that's, you know, it wasn't even like a case of interest at that time. Like, he could have gotten the attorney, you know, as soon as he got back. Mm-hmm. But we have no right to know. You know, he's not a public officer. You can't foil it. You know, like, he's a private individual, and the attorney-client relationship is a private relationship. So there's no way for us to compel that, you know, information.
Lakers, you can ask in chat. I've never seen you before, so no, I'm not going to give you a link. I don't even know who you are. I think he's dead and buried by his parents. Nah, I don't think so. That I don't believe.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I mean, anything could have happened with all of this media. And I mean, he may have just wanted to get off the grid and go out. I mean, that's something that, you know, I'm told that that's who he was. Like, he liked to do that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just to clear your head and go out there. And he maybe overestimated his skills and got into a situation. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he was, you know, but if could be. I don't know what wild animals are there. I just know alligators and stuff like that. That's a possibility. And that's why the parents got nervous and called the FBI. But to me, that's a big thing. They brought down this massive search on him. Mm-hmm. Is he fleeing, or you know, if you're a conspiracy theorist about this, maybe he'd already left the country at that point. I don't know. I really don't know. But I just looking at the reasonableness of all of these new things that we're learning, like flying home, if that was confirmed, that kind of fits his MO. Mm-hmm. When things get hot, he walks away, not, you know, attacks. There's been no independent person who's ever said he was the aggressor in any, you know, aspect of their relationship.
But in all fairness, either did Chris Watts, and we all know how that ended up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pointing out that everyone is so convinced. You know, I'm not so convinced. I do believe he's responsible, but I'm leaving that door open, you know, because we don't know what they know.
I agree. I just, I want to have faith in the FBI, and I want to have faith that they're looking in the right spot. I knew dog was a joke, but that they're looking in the right spot. But to be so focused on that one spot and not look in other places makes me wonder. Like, I mean, the good news is they did find another dead body in the area, there, but I don't know. It just seems odd to me that they're so focused in this one spot, but they're not even focused in one area. They're all over the place of this spot. So, like, I wish they would say why they're so focused in that spot.
Yeah. Could be some evidence he left behind, but they don't know how long ago he was there. So they're doing their search from that point out. That would make sense.
Mm-hmm. Misery, I still don't know if it's you or not. Just ask question. We do not know the whole story yet. We don't.
Yeah.
So my other question is, are you familiar with Michael Crow case?
You know how, I mean, I heard about it. I looked up the case. I read the court's decision. It kind of excluded Chris McDonough, but when you showed that video, which I never saw before, I was so compelled by that. And it brought a tear to my eye with this poor kid. When you think about the situation, I think he walked in on his sister who'd been murdered.
No, he didn't walk in. He was up. And that was one of the reasons they came at him, was because they were saying, how did you not hear this going on at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was? How did you not hear this if you were walking down the hallway? And his answer was, I was in a daze. Like, I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, yeah. Let me correct what I said. I didn't mean to say like he walked in on the perpetrator. I think he discovered his sister, dead. And how traumatic that must have been for him. He's a 14-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw the coercive way that McDonough was questioning him, I was really upset by that, But let me just say this, though. That's hindsight, knowing the kid is not guilty and looking at it, So I didn't know. In all fairness to Chris, I didn't know what he knew, evidentiary-wise, why he felt so strongly that he was guilty. But the way he was doing it when he said, what are we going to do if they find your hair in her hand? That to me that is unethical. You shouldn't do that, and especially with a 14-year-old kid. First, talking to a 14-year-old kid just bothers me in and of itself. I can't believe that was legal. But in doing it that way, I mean, this is a kid, 14 years old, and you're messing with his head and making him think, well, if it happened, I was unaware of it, like he got to that point. And I'm thinking of Marty Tankliff at that point, after being grilled for hours. Well, if it happened, you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to rationalize it. Well, if it happened, I was unaware of it. But did you ever black out before? No, never. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I knew, you would know. Like, all of those statements to me were just like, God, this poor kid,
Have you ever heard Marty Tankliff's 911 call?
No, I didn't.
She is the biggest bitch I have ever seen in my entire life. She was such exactly what 911 calls should not be, was this call. She was like, well, just calm down. This kid just found both his parents dead. Yeah. Well, just do listen to this. Why? Yeah. I'm not understanding you. Oh, my God. He just found both his parents dead. Give the guy some slack. She was such an idiot.
That's horrible.
I was like, wow.
You get what you pay for. They don't get paid much at all, these dispatchers. It's horrible.
So as a cop, the read technique. As a detective, as a former detective, the read technique.
No, I was a police officer. Remember, I was telling you the last time I had this incident where I knocked out a detective, broke his jaw. That was one of the things. They said, you're never going to get promoted. we saved your job, but you no longer have a career. So,
Okay.
and that's why I ended up leaving the job. But anyway, that's a long story.
The Reed technique is the most controversial way of questioning, but yet it's still used. And unfortunately, in California, the Reed technique with minors is still in existence. And in other states, they've changed it. In California, to this day, as of May of 2021, they will advise you that you can have an attorney and that you can have a parent, but it's not forced. And it's not necessity like it is in some other states now, like Wisconsin. It's forced. You have to have it, either a parent or an attorney.
So it's waivable by a 14-year-old? I'm waiving my right to be.
Yep.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
It's still
that's why
California.
That's why 14-year-olds can't enter into contracts because they can't really perceive and comprehend the consequences of what they're signing, you know. And similarly, in a case like this, they can't possibly understand the right that they're waiving and how important it is, you know. So it shouldn't be allowed. I disagree with it. And another reason why everyone should vote and go to your legislatures and outlaw that practice. It's wrong. I think you'll find a lot of police and law enforcement officers would disagree with that and just voluntarily not engage in that. It's just wrong.
Do you know here in Alabama, age of consent is 14. And when my son was in the hospital, he could sign his papers. I'm like, don't you need me to sign it as a minor? No, you could sign papers of 14. So if he went to a doctor, if he wanted a sex change, if he wanted an operation, all he has to be is 14. How sick is that?
How is it? Alabama, I never thought of Alabama as like some liberal state of, you know, all of this madness, progressivism, and is it really like that down there? I mean, I got a good friend that lives down in, I think it's Montgomery, retired detective. I mean, he's a hard-nosed guy and very conservative. I would find it hard to believe that he would move down a jurisdiction like that where the state now can mandate and take control over how your kids are being raised and what they're being taught and what they're, you know, being encouraged to do, and without parental consent. That's shocking.
14. Even when, like, when I take the physical therapy, he signs his own papers. He's almost 17, but he signs his own papers. I don't sign anything.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's rough.
Crazy.
Somebody's not voting down there. There's a problem.
Right. I'll vote. People. I'll vote. I promise I'll vote.
All right. I'm going to check your voter ID card.
All right. You do that. I want to get on jury duty, so I have to vote. I am registered to vote, but
one has nothing to do with the other. That's a misconception that if you register to vote, you're automatically into a jury pool.
So how come I've never been called for jury duty? Ever.
You have a driver's license. You're in the state system anyway. So
why have I never been called for jury duty? Ever. New York, Iowa, Florida, California, Alabama. I've lived a lot of places.
You could go down to the county clerk and just ask them,
really?
You know, because you have to serve every 4 years. You know, that's the law. Or you can't be forced to serve, you know, more than once in 4 years. I should say it that way. Not that you have to. You may be called 7 years later, but you can't be called for another 4 years after you've served.
I've never been called. I've never, no matter what state I'm in. I thought it had to do with voting. That because
everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks that, no, if I register to vote, they're going to get me for jury duty. Oh, and your driver's license that you have?
Yeah, I have
that. That database does not affect, no.
Wow.
It's just silly.
I'm not secretly a felon. I have no felony charges.
Yeah.
No, age of consent, you're talking sexual consent. I'm talking like signature consent is 14.
To enter into a contract, that's what you're saying.
Enter into a contract is 14.
That's your legal right as to give consent. Wow. Medical treatment and stuff like that. That's incredible.
14.
Wow.
Sign your own papers are 14.
I would vote against it. And if you ran for a local office to change that, I'd vote for you. That's how simple this is. This is how the process works. I don't support that. So I'm not, I'm not going to vote for somebody that does. I'm going to work with you on this. It's a good thing. It feels good when you do it.
You can help me run for office?
Well, yeah, if you want to. I mean, I thought it was the greatest experience, running for office. I only ran like countywide, Queens County, not like a state or citywide office. But it was so much fun to be out there, meet the people, be on. It was like I was a cop again. I was out on patrol again because that's kind of what we do. We're out there. I loved working foot patrol because you get to meet the people in the community and talk to them, and you see everything that's going on. So we were walking everywhere, doing, all kinds of stuff, parades and Columbus Day Parade, all that stuff. It was great. I really just loved it. And then I got called a racist and this and that, depending on where I was. And I was like, wow, I haven't heard that or been treated like this since I was a cop. This is great. It's bringing back memories. So, it was good.
Thank you, Lynn. Law enforcement says it found remnants of recently used campsite at Carlton Reserve in the search for buying laundry.
That's great. That's what I was talking about. Maybe they found something where they can kind of confirm he was there, and they don't know how long ago he was there, and they're widening the search like that's ground zero, think of a dartboard, like a bullseye, and then the rings that go outside it. That's the right way to do a search.
All right. Anyone? We've been on 2.5 hours. I've taken this man's time.
Wait a minute. 2.5 hours?
2.5 hours we've been on.
That's great.
So anyone have any questions? Final questions? CNN just reported that 36 minutes. Did Brian Enton report it? He's my go-to. Hey, Tinker. QT for office. Hell yeah. And I don't know the first thing about politics. I say everybody should make a lot of money.
Yeah, but you have you're so many people are afraid to speak up. And that's what drew me to you. Like, you were just sounding off on what you felt, what you believe. That's the first big step. You want somebody that's not afraid to go against the grain and fight for what they believe in,
And I will.
And that's powerful. So you have a great head start.
Thank you.
You're intelligent. I think you could be a good candidate.
Thank you.
We just got to polish up and not fill that swear jar so much,
Hey, I didn't curse tonight. I said one word. One word. I usually don't curse during interviews, though.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. I have no complaints.
Okay, Nellie has a question. I've seen this a couple times tonight. Can you please ask Joe what he thinks about Brian's father being excited about assisting the search in the Carlton Reserve? Am I in a twilight zone? What purpose? That's why I don't think he's in there.
Again, yes, I can see why you would say that if you believe that they have already secured his departure somewhere else, so they're free to do it. I'm of the belief, I don't think these people are going to risk prison to do all of that. I'm of the belief that this kid said he was going to go somewhere, be here and be there, call you this day, that day, and he just did not, follow that schedule, and they panicked and look, we're worried about him. Let's call the police. So I think him being happy about volunteering to be involved in this search, to me, that's consistent. I always look for consistencies. What behaviors are consistent, what's inconsistent or inconsistent.
Or he's happy to get out of his house. He has no choice. He's got to get out of his house.
Yeah, I think everybody says it's a conspiracy. I disagree.
I don't.
I think this case is going to be hard, even if it is a murder and they have, some DNA and stuff. It's going to be hard. They were living in that van, and they had prior domestic violence. So she scratched him before and may have his DNA under her nails. Prove that it wasn't from the prior domestic violence. Like, there's a lot of problems here. So to hire a lawyer and go in there and get the evidence and fight this case, that's his best option. Fleeing is not a good option. This is a case you want to fight. You know, whether you're guilty or not, this is not a case you flee from. So hiring a lawyer, I thought was totally appropriate. I think the lawyer was in touch with the government and they probably reached out to him and said, okay, if you can surrender. And they're very friendly about that. They're like, okay, fine. We want him as soon as possible. Okay, but it's Sunday. Could we come tomorrow? Monday? Sure. You know, it's not that crazy unless they really felt that he was going to flee. But up until that point, there was no evidence of that.
I agree
in my view. I mean, of course, I don't know what they know, but in my view, and he retained counsel. Retaining counsel is one of the most powerful, you know, things to demonstrate you're going to fight this case. You know, I mean, you know, buying airline tickets would be, yeah, if he came home and bought airline tickets, yeah. He came home and retained counsel. That tells me he's ready to fight. I did nothing wrong. I know they're going to blame me. Everyone's going to blame me. I got to be prepared for this and defend it.
He's too young. I think he's too young.
It kind of makes me feel that he did, as the parents indicated, go into this, you know, park of reserve and something tragically happened to him. And that's why they called down the awesome power of the government to go find him. I don't know. I know everybody thinks it's a conspiracy and they're all covering up, and I don't buy it.
See, I don't believe it's a conspiracy, but I also believe that the FBI is only this into it simply because they fucked up and now they have no choice and they can't turn back, but they're not going to look dumb. And they said they knew where Brian was. Then it turns out they didn't know where Brian was, and Brian disappeared. Their own egos are not going to allow them to not find Brian. And I really believe that a big part of this search is their own ego, because there's a lot of people that disappear out of their radar. They don't look for them like this. There's a lot of, you know, murderers that are on the loose that they don't look for like this. They don't put $200,000 a day or whatever it was behind trying to find somebody. People that have, you know, done mass killings way worse than Brian. Even if Brian did kill Gabby, people that have killed multiple people and are on the run, they don't put this kind of manpower.
You know, he was killing people and
They don't put this.
But I agree with you. The egg on their face, and that's very powerful. Just like I told you when I exposed the Queens District Attorney's incompetence for keeping these felony charges, and she's such a feminist against a woman with no record who they know was not responsible for this. The target in the search warrant was her husband. She just happened to be home with the kids. He was out. But you're absolutely right. The egg on the face, after me trying to get this charge reduced for a year, they, 1 week, it was in the papers. She was getting calls. Boom. Embarrassed her.
Yep.
You know, and it went from that one publication, which is wonderful when you see what happens, and everyone picked up the story and they kept, you know, advancing it, and they were like, we got to do something.
Yep.
So I think that's what's happening here. The FBI really with the egg on the face, not keeping tabs on him, keeping an eye on him. Bam, they look horrible. So go get them, guys, you know?
One last final question that, Towns, I'm glad you said that. We don't know what was moved to storage, if the story is even true, but I had said that people are asking and want to know why Brian's family wouldn't give her personal items back to Gabby's family. My thing was the lawyer, the FBI, or somebody may have said to them, do not give anything. We may need evidence. Don't turn over anything. Is that true? that that's something the FBI or an attorney would have said, or were they just completely avoiding them?
I think they could have said something like, "We'd prefer that you not disturb," like she and Brian. I don't know what their arrangement was. Were they actually in the same room, or did she have her own room? I think they would probably make that, advice to ask them. Of course, they can't compel them, but please just preserve it the way it is, because they may, for whatever reason, want to go back and search or get some other information. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that could be something that happened.
Because I just feel like if the FBI didn't say that, or somebody didn't say that, then why wouldn't they give it to the FBI to give to them? Like, why couldn't Gabby's family request that the FBI get them their daughter's stuff? And the
Well, they
FBI
really
hasn't turned it
can't.
over.
I mean, that's like a surrogate's court thing. Somebody would have to petition the court to be the administrator of her estate and then, proceed that way. You just can't give people property, especially as a police officer. Like when we show up and there's a decedent there, it's kind of funny. People start coming in looking to pull rings off the fingers, and we have to tell them, no, sorry. This all has to be resolved in surrogate's court. I don't know if she has in her will, I hated my sister and she gets nothing. I don't know that. I don't care you're her sister, not that I don't care. I would never tell her that, but honestly, yeah, this is going to go through the proper channels. So the FBI can't direct them to give back her property. That's a legal question of property rights. Someone would have to go and petition to be her administrator, and they step in her shoes and collect her property. It becomes part of her estate.
So parents don't get that right automatically, or because she wasn't a minor?
Yeah, if she was a minor, yeah, because they would be the guardian and then guardian of her property and you still have to go to surrogate's court. There has to be somebody designated by law to be the representative of the decedent. Who knows? Maybe she had a will. We don't even know that. It's entirely possible.
So based on what you said, it's also very possible that her lawyer said, don't turn anything over based on they wanted to go through the courts. Yeah,
I mean, I would be concerned about turning things over of value. I mean, if she had a will or but a picture, or I don't know what personal property they're talking about. They're not talking about like her socks, I mean, but yeah, it's a concern. You have to. It's a horrible situation. I met Joe Petito. I went to the memorial service, and God, I am so humbled by that guy. He is at peace. He's in a good place. He's more like motivated to help others now. It seems like he's already, because I remember seeing him on a couple of like news things, and I could see, and I'm a father of 2 kids. My daughter's 23 years old. I mean, I don't know if I would have had a pair of pliers and a blowtorch, from Pulp Fiction, that line that they use. I have the people who can make that happen, God bless him. The rage, and I even said that. I was like, I can only imagine the rage. And he's like, no, I'm not there. He was really in a good place, talking about helping others and just very positive. And I was just like, God, if such tragedy ever befell me or my family, I would reach out to that guy, because whatever he did, he did it right. And he's just so at peace where he is, and I just found that so hard to believe, but I was so blown away by that.
He seems like such a great guy. He really does.
Yeah.
He really does. And I hate making a judgment like that of someone I've never actually physically met, but just the things he says, his whole persona, he just really seems like a great guy.
He was so engaging. He was talking to everyone. There were a group of girls there, and he was just giving them such good advice about, about boys and girls, and we all have to learn. And it's such positive. I don't know that I could be that positive.
I
I was
hear you.
so humbled after, learning about all of this stuff and seeing the domestic violence. That's his baby. That's his
Yep.
girl. I mean, wow. And he's just in such a great place right now. I hope, he remains there. And it certainly looks like it. He's setting up this
Hmm.
foundation or
Yeah, to set it
charity.
up.
And he said that to me. He said, I want to help others. I want to help others and draw attention and try to help other people who are in this situation. That's incredible,
I
you
agree.
know?
I absolutely agree with that because I definitely couldn't. And I maybe eventually, but not that quick. Maybe
Yeah,
eventually I
yeah.
could get to that point, but right off the bat. But it's such a positive way to look
Mm-mm.
at it because you can't bring Gabby back. There's nothing they can do to bring Gabby
Uh,
back,
yeah. I guess
So,
that's, when you sit there with the reality, I mean, nothing will ever heal that wound,
yep.
that loss will be there forever. That was one of the most difficult things that I had to do, make a death notification. And usually the detectives do it. But we were so busy and it happened in Jersey. It was a car accident. I had to tell this guy that his sister was dead. And wow, I mean, it was so painful just to have to break that news to somebody and try to console them in some way. It was just so painful, and I
Yep.
can only imagine. And thank God I have to imagine it, and it hasn't happened to me, but only imagine the pain
Hmm.
of losing a child. Like, but that's not supposed to happen.
I
We're
agree.
supposed to die first.
I
Our
agree.
kids are supposed to bury us.
Yep. I
So,
agree.
keep the prayers coming for that Petito family because God, what they're going through right now, and it's working. I see it. It's working. So
Um,
keep that going.
Jeanette, no, I don't think he's innocent. That's not what I said. I definitely don't think he's innocent. He's definitely guilty. But I am going to cut this because it is raining so bad out, and the last thing I need is for my internet to get cut due to bad weather, and we're in the middle of a live. So I don't know if you can hear that rain, but it is bad.
Yeah.
So if you hear, oh, that time you couldn't hear, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear, but it's bad. So I am going to cut this. Joe, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. I really hope you come back.
Denise, this was the greatest
Thank you.
interview. Laura, no, seriously, it was a pleasure. This is, I enjoy this. I've been a cop since I was 20 years old. And then I ended up teaching criminal justice when I left the job and I became a lawyer. I taught criminal justice at ASA College in New York here. And I interned at the Queens District Attorney's Office and the New York State Attorney General's Office. Like, I love this stuff.
Hmm.
I had to become a defense attorney. I applied, growing up in Queens, been a cop in Queens, went to school in Queens, everything. I'm Mr. Queens. I worked as an intern for the Queens DA, and they loved me because of all those reasons and wanted to hire me. I made it to the executive round, and the guy that was running it said, "Look, we would love to have you. I mean, you're perfect." But New York State has these double dipping
Hmm.
laws. You can't be a member of two pension systems. So I already have a NYPD police pension. So I can't now join NYCERS, which is the civilian pension for, if I was to join the DA's office. So these double dipping laws, but think of the rationale here. They recruit me, they train me, they give me such wonderful experience. And then they say, go ahead. I went to CUNY schools. I went to Queens College. I went to CUNY
My
Law
mom went to
School.
Queens
And
College.
for the benefit of the state, all of these things. And then they tell me, okay, take it. and go to New Jersey and become a prosecutor. Like, what? Oh, and they give me a pension that I'm happily spending here. But then now I want to be a prosecutor. Like, no, take that experience, the pension, and the education we gave you and go to another state. What's wrong with this? It doesn't make sense. So counterintuitive. But anyway, that's why I was like, look, you're forcing me to go to the dark side here. And, I'm their worst nightmare when I get on a case, So
I thought about
but it's so
going to
much
law
fun.
school.
I like what I do. I really do. And people are so confused by it. Wait, you're a cop, now you're a defense attorney? And in reality, I'm kind of helping the same people that I was helping as a cop.
That's true.
Our whole job is not arresting people. We're out there in the community. We're solving problems. We're the go-to for every problem that people come up with. They come to us, and then we outsource it to other people, or we resolve it. So I've been, and I love Foot Patrol because you're really in the community, instead of all the windows rolled up, the air conditioning, and you're riding around. I liked being on foot. So I'm sorry, I'm helping the same people that I helped as a cop. I'm doing the same job. I know you want to cut. I just can't stop talking, but there's a funny situation. Like, I was a cop in Queens, and I would bring perps into the central booking and drop them off. And when you walk in uniform, you get snarled at, pig, cop, cracker. Like, you get they don't know who I am, but they're judging me on my outer uniform. Now I walk into the same central booking with this uniform on, with a pad and a folder in my hand, and they're like, "Oh, excuse me, sir." They judge you by, "Oh, this guy's an attorney. Oh, all right, let me be nice to this guy. Let me talk to him. Hey, could you check this out? I've been waiting here for." They're so nice to you. I'm the same guy. I was the same guy walking in, it's so amazing, like sociological, how people interact, groups, and I was so fascinated by that. So anyway, I'm sorry to bore you with that, but it's just funny.
I wanted to become an attorney. I should have done it years ago. I would have 3 years of law school left. Everything I've looked up, one, I don't want to do the financial aid, but I'm too old already. Like,
I didn't either. That's why I went to CUNY. But, it's so funny because you lived in New York. St. John's Law School was like right down the block. And they used the same bookstore. We bought the same books in the same bookstore. We're learning the same law, but they're paying, 100-something thousand for their degree. And my education in law school was $6,000, $7,000, and $8,000. Like, it went up $1,000 each year. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I got so lucky with this. But, law school for us is so much easier. Like, think about it. We're older and we have so much life experience. You tried your own case, so you're going to understand family law. Like, you're going to, it. And tort law, you've gone through the trial proceedings. You know how a case works. Cross-examination, direct evidence. And then you have a class in evidence. And then you have a class in, I was a cop, so criminal law and constitutional law are the same. They overlap, the same principles. That you're interpreting the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Eighth Amendment. So it became so easy to me. And everyone was like, "Oh, this idiot, he's a dumb boxer. What is he going to do? He's never going to do it." And I passed. I got in. I did well. I graduated cum laude in my, undergrad. I just loved it. I was dying to do it. Passed the bar in the first. Oh, he's an idiot. Oh, he graduated. He'll never pass the bar.
That's what I'm afraid of. I am afraid of not passing the bar. I said that a couple of years ago.
No, it's not. Everyone says it's so hard. I walked out the first day, which was the New York specific, and it was essays. And I was like, I told my wife at the time, I was like, I don't know. I was done so fast, and it seemed so easy. I must have missed something. And then the second day I went back, it was the multi-state. It's multiple choice. And there's 2 right answers for everything. But, I did so well there pass the bar with no problem. I think the only people that have trouble with the bar are guys like Kennedy who were out with the girls and doing, like, they're not applying themselves, because it's really, law school is not hard. It's voluminous. Like, you don't just get one case. They assign you 10 cases to read. So you have to, like, go through them and spot the issues and do that. But doing the work is not hard. The cases are not hard to understand. The principles, they're based on real life facts. You know, people go in with whatever controversy they go to court with. So it's just voluminous. You have to do so much reading and writing, but
learning the law, I had to do that too. I'm too old already. I'm 50 years old. I'm almost 51. If I went to law school,
I'm going to be 54 this year. You know,
but if I went to law school, let's say I signed up for a fall semester, summer, spring semester. Started then, 3 years. I have 1 year of my master's, so 3 years for law school. That brings me at 54, almost 54. Who the hell is going to hire me at almost 55 years old to start out?
Let's pick out a casket. You're done.
Pretty much.
54 is not, come on.
For graduating law school?
And now they have 2.5 years. You could do an expedited, which I wanted to do. And but they wanted me to stay with their class. Like, I was one of the high scorers in the school, and they were worried about their bar pass rate. And no, we want you to stay here. I could have been done 2.5 years because I took summer classes both years, after my first year and after my second year, and I built up these extra credits. So you could do it in 2.5 years on an accelerated, schedule. So, come on, girl. I got you running for office, going to law school.
But here's the problem, though. You have to go to law school where you want to practice. And Iowa would be the most logical because that's where I know the law. But I don't want to do Alabama law. And in order for me to go to school here, I would have to practice here. Same thing with New York. I can't afford New York. I would love to do law in New York. I can't afford to live there. Yeah. That's the problem that I run into.
You kind of can, because if you practice in the federal courts,
doesn't matter.
It's the same in every state. It's federal law. Employment discrimination. There's a lot of civil rights violations. All of that stuff is universal. It's not state specific. You're interpreting federal statutes. So, you can practice anywhere. And now, after this pandemic with all this virtual stuff,
I know.
Like, I never knew what Zoom was before this. And now I go to court. I get up, I have a little breakfast, and then I go into my living room and go to court. I have a case in Brooklyn, a case in Queens. I'm on federal court. It's crazy, like what you can do now. I don't need to be here. I could go to Alabama and then still handle my New York docket,
That's true.
It's incredible.
That is true. So, all right. I am going to shut this down. Joe, everyone wants to know when you're coming back. Joe is a regular.
Listen, I love it.
All right. Joe is a regular on Police Off the Cuff, as well as Duty Ron. So you can always catch him there as well when he's not coming here. But we'll get him back here. And it was an absolute pleasure. Like I said, you are welcome anytime. And I'll have to steal you from Duty Ron and Police Off the Cuff more often.
I just have to tell you, and I don't want you to be upset by this, but I had a terrible bout with COVID. I was in the hospital. I came home, I was on oxygen. I was really weak. I am so far behind on my work. And I even told these guys, and I love these guys. So we'll work it out. Like, if something's going on and you need me, I'll do everything I can to be there. But I went to court the other day and they set a trial schedule for this one case I have, November 4th. And there's so much work I got to do to get this trial ready, this case. So I'm here. I want to do it. And you have my number. We're in constant contact. If I can do it, I'm going to do it 100%.
Absolutely.
I love this. What are you saying? It's 2 hours? I didn't even realize it.
It's 3 hours.
Amazing. 3 hours. But I love this stuff. As you can see, I lived it since I'm 20 years old. I'm 50. I'll be 54 now. This year, I'm doing this 34 years. It's in my blood. It's all I knew my entire adult life. So Bring it on.
All right. Again, it was a pleasure. Guys, I want to thank you guys for the super chat. Thank you guys for the PayPals. I'm really glad you guys had some awesome questions. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. And Joe, you have a wonderful night. And again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's so much fun. And good night to everyone. You were great.
Good night, guys.